thing that I've been finding is that these like, well, there's a lot that you can do just like holistically where you don't need like the super high tech invasive technology. And the
Mm-hmm.
biggest example I've been finding is just the shit I'm hearing about babies having like the umbilical cord wrapped around their neck and shit like
Oh
that.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's actually not, you don't need to go to the hospital for that. You don't need to go to the hospital for that. I mean, there's okay, again, this is like everything. It's been a little while since we needed to ever use this qualifier, but I'm not a doctor, all right.
Yeah, yeah.
But
It's been a couple
so
of years.
exactly, so there's outlier cases. Um, but to be honest, I'm talking about women's health right now, so I think this is a perfect opportunity for me to just like have some big dick authority and just like tell these broads what's what.
Yeah, of
But
course. I mean, some man has to.
well, I think we just need like a calm, firm, steady voice in these issues. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Kind of mix it up. Um, she's not looking at me at all. She's ignoring me. Anyways, no, you don't need to go to the hospital for that. Unless
So
there's
what?
some like particular outliers, right? You can flip that fucker around, right? And
Mm-hmm.
what you were talking about just as like as far as like oh, let's get an ultrasound, see what position the baby's in, yada yada yada. Dude, we just go to these broads and we just like have them fucking
Feel
just
around.
literally just kind of like jam their hands up on my wife's belly and
Yeah.
just literally fucking, it's like they're grabbing the baby through some uh fucking saran wrap or
Yeah,
something, you know
yeah.
what I
There's
mean?
like, yep, that's the head. Yep, I can feel feet. All right, that sounds pretty good there.
Yeah, no, exactly. And like I've kind of joined in and it's like it is a little bit weird now, like just like being able, like I like push and I'm like that's a fucking leg, there's a
Oh my
fucking
God.
leg right there.
It
That's
is it
weird,
is a
man.
trip feeling a pregnant woman's stomach. I mean, I've only done it to like people that are friends or whatever, and they're like, "Here, feel the baby kick and stuff." But I mean, when it's like your own child in there and you're actually getting familiar with it, dude, I can imagine it's kind of strange.
So straight up, the biggest thing is you just like stop thinking about it. Like I keep saying this, everyone's like, "Hey man, how you feeling? How's all that?" And it's like, "How you feeling? What are you thinking about?" And it's like, dude, all the feeling, most of the feeling and thinking that I've done was 99% of it was like a month before we actually got pregnant,
Yeah.
right? Once you're actually going, it's just like everything's kind of moving so quickly, and then it's crazy how you get acclimated to a new normal, right?
Hmm.
It's just like I don't know, like every so I've had here and there moments that are quite moving where I get, even this morning in church, there's like a toddler he was being held by his father,
Oh yeah.
having this moment where the toddler's just like holding his dad's face and just like gazing into his face and like just being all loving, and I'm just like, this is like profound, right? I'm like
Yeah.
about to experience that. I like love it, right, shit like that. But it's a lot of just don't underestimate, never underestimate just the like, well, like your brain just filters shit out so that you can just keep
Hmm.
marching forward.
Oh yeah.
um
People got
and
to adapt. That's how we made it to this point. Just like figuring out how to adapt into any situation.
exactly, so like it's a trip. I like don't think about it all that much, like it more than anything, like when I see like that, because there's sometimes too where like that little fucker will like stretch out or like kick, and
Oh,
like her stomach will get pushed out like literally 2 to 3 inches.
whoa.
um
Bro, I
and
watched Alien this past weekend, and now and I'm thinking about shit pushing at stomachs,
no,
and it's like,
no, that's
whoa,
exactly what I was about to say. That's funny, like it just makes me think of like Alien more than
yeah.
anything. Also, like I've been using this Burt's Bees belly lotion to
Mm,
basically like put on her belly because it helps with like stretch marks, which
yeah,
to be honest, she's like got a pretty good record. Like a lot of
nice.
broad, it's genetics, right? But like a lot of broads be looking like they got a fucking spider web on their tummy, which like we
Mm,
love them. We love all
hmm.
the mothers out there, right? Except for mine. I'm just kidding. But like she just basically got like one little stretch mark, and which is like kind of crazy.
God, that's
But
a blessing.
it is,
That's
but
something
like
that women will fixate on, dude. I was working at a medical spa, and the amount of people that come in about like stretch marks to try to get them worked on is unbelievable. Or like the amount of
oh, I
products that they
don't doubt
sell
it.
for just fucking stretch marks and like cellulitis and that kind of stuff is, which I know they're not necessarily related, those two things, but
it's like
they're
similar.
similar. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think she struggles as much with like image as much as a lot of broads do, which is
Yeah,
helpful.
that's good.
Honestly, any more, I mean, again, my wife is like sitting across the room from me right now, so it's kind of awkward, but like to just kind of like analyze her a little bit, I think it's like
Yeah,
less
go
about
ahead.
like,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Hey, honey, listen up. Listen up. Which, by the way, I don't want you to talk on podcasts because if anything ever happens, I want plausible deniability. Your voice will never be on this show. Don't
Yeah,
even
yeah.
make a noise. I love you. I'm
I'll
protecting
edit it
you.
out.
Yeah, I don't even want you. She just did a little air smooch at me. I don't want the mic to pick that up.
No, no, no.
Uh,
I'll go ahead and
yeah,
put a
not at
beep
all.
over that. A long beep that's just like censored, redacted.
Exactly. No, but like to analyze this broad a little bit, I think it's less about like, oh no, like this has marred my physical appearance. I don't think it's that because also to be fair, straight up, like we're talking like fucking. I mean, I'm not gonna like ethnically dox my my wife, but just like she's got really good genetics and like it hasn't been a difficult pregnancy for her,
Yeah.
right? I say that, I mean, yeah, her feet are swollen. It's a pain in the ass, pain in the back more than anything. But like we've known people that like slender frame, not
Oh
the right
yeah.
proportions. It's difficult, right? That said, I think the actual kind of psychic challenge, and I totally get I can understand where she's coming from with this is probably a little bit more just like it's become more real. You know what I mean? Like
Mm,
things just are different. It's not that they're different in a better or a worse way. It's just that they're different at all,
yeah.
right?
Change has
And
happened, and there's like a physical indication of it that's not going away.
exactly. And yeah, I don't know.
It's nice.
The
It's
thing that
God's gift, stretch marks. It's like tally marks, you know? You get a little bit more when you have another baby. You just keep racking them up.
absolutely, that's a great way of looking at it. And
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, I get tripped out a little bit. The nice thing is like the thing I've been telling myself, and I think this is like an important thing for like life in general, is like I like worry about like, oh man, am I gonna be like on the level, be able to like do this shit? And the nice thing is like I kind of just like doing shit for people more than I like doing shit for me. You know,
Well, now you got that all the time. Or in a few
it,
weeks, you got that all the time.
exactly, because it's just like, oh, like I have low standards. I don't really give a fuck if like I don't really give a fuck about like making shit nice so that I can enjoy it. But like for somebody else, it makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah.
Um, and so when I think about that, where I'm just like, yeah, but like you're gonna be doing shit for another person, and that person's gonna be your wife who you love, and then a little fucking doppelganger of you and her
Yeah.
who's cute as shit. And it's like, all right, that's like the motivation probably won't be like particularly hard to find in that
No, I
in that
think it's
way.
baked in. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So the software just gets running, and she has her doubts, but the thing I've kind of been like keeping a laser focus on is basically just like, oh man, you like wonder if you're like gonna do a good job as a mother. All right, well like you're already eating the right stuff. You're like already taking good
Yeah.
care of yourself with like sleep and like stretching and stuff like that. You like you're not gonna potentially be a good mom. You like literally are
You
already.
are. Yeah, actively.
And,
It already started.
exactly, and so that's helpful.
And think
To that
about
point.
this.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
There's a lot of retards out there that have been moms, and like, not saying that it's good to be like a bad mom or whatever, but I mean, you're gonna be doing fine. There's a lot of people that have like never planned to have a kid, didn't want to have their kid, didn't do real good, and their kids come out fine. You know, that's like if you're putting the minimum effort into it, you actually have a good heart and you're focused about like, is this going to turn out right? I want to make the right decisions. You're like doing better than 80% of people. You're in the top like 80 percentile of moms already. So that's good. You're good. Y'all
Exactly, and
are
so
smooth sailing.
that's kind of well. Thank you, man. That's kind of what I'm
Yeah,
thinking.
dude.
And to that point you were making earlier, just about like they in the right position and shit like that. That this is actually the main thing I was gonna say, which is um, for the lovely folks at home. I was talking about earlier. We're not seeing an OB for any of this. We're not doing a hospital birth. We're gonna be doing it at home. We're working with midwives and a doula, And which, by the way, I'm like a little skeptical of doulas a little bit. You know what I mean? Where
Yeah,
like,
they're kind of like little witch doctors or something, baby witch
well,
doctors, or like,
it's also just one of these things of like, of just like, I like get that you're like here to like provide support and like give me a fucking hot pocket or something while like I'm busy taking care of my wife. But like, dude, like in previous generations, like we would just like have my mom doing that.
yeah,
And
yeah,
like,
you just
yeah,
have
maybe it
someone
sucks to like
around.
have my mom look at my wife's vag, you know, but like, I don't know. I'm just skeptical of it. I need to
I
be more.
thought you were gonna say that she was coming to the home birth earlier when you mentioned that she was gonna go to the midwife appointment,
Nah,
and I was
no.
kind
One
of
of
like
our
taken
specific.
aback at first.
I mean, it's a little weird, right? But no, actually, one of our specific rules is like our moms just like aren't allowed to be there. But
Yeah,
anyways, point is,
I see
I was
what you mean.
talking
It's like a
about
therapist doing a friend's role, kind of the same kind of idea. Like the doula is kind of forming the role of like some elder in the community that would just otherwise be present within people's lives.
exactly what while like I think the actual ideal arrangement for a doula is to have a friend of yours who's a mom come and do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's like actually the pro move in my opinion. But anyways, point is, you were talking earlier, and I was talking about like doing it this way. You need to like and it's been such a long and slow process that like it just kind of happened slowly over time. And now I kind of realize I like know a lot more than a lot of people about this. Like it's a lot more DIY, for lack of a better word. And so you kind of just like individually are a lot more like empowered to manage the stuff and take care of it and do what needs to be done and look for the right things. We were talking earlier about just like, a lot of people will just be like, I don't know, contractions started. Let's just start doing ping pong back and forth with the hospital and home. They'll just keep sending us home, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with us, it's like I like know how to count
Yeah.
and fucking track it, and we know when to call who and all that. And point is, a really great example of that we're doing right now is there's these like I guess what they're called. I don't know if they're called this just because it's like some organization or whatever, but they're commonly referred to as like spinning babies techniques, right? So basically, it's sort of like static stretches
Okay.
for the mom, right? So she's one of them is my wife's kind of getting on her hands and knees, but she's putting her knees up on the edge of the couch and kind of putting her at like a pretty steep incline so
Okay.
that the baby can kind of like basically float down further away from the uterus, right? And kind of just, I don't fucking know. All of this stuff is about getting baby into a better position, right?
Yeah.
Another one, fuck, I don't even remember the other one, but there's three of them. The big one that involves me is she gets down into basically like a table pose, like
Mm-hmm.
we're talking yoga, and I get a big piece of fabric standing above her, and we kind of cradle her whole stomach in it, right? She's doing table pose, so her belly's just dangling,
Mm-hmm.
and I pull up so that all of the weight that she's carrying around there,
You're holding
I'm
it.
I'm holding, and then about 3 to 5 minutes, you slowly ramp up by kind of pulling back and forth, almost in like a sawing motion.
Mm.
Uh,
Kind of like
uh,
cleaning a bowling ball.
ex- it's exactly like that. It's that motion, right?
Okay.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Except it's a lot heavier than a bowling ball. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
heavy as fuck, dude.
It doesn't
And
roll quite as good.
yeah, and so what you're basically doing is like, there's just this huge ligament for your like uterus, I guess, like just across the front surface of the belly, and it gets really really tightened. That's where like a lot of broads get like Braxton Hicks kind of like,
Mm.
I don't know if it's like a cramp or something, but it's just like sore ligament, whatever. Honestly, it'd be really interesting if we had any like broads that were into this stuff that could comment, but I mean maybe
God.
we do,
It'd be
honestly.
nice to
But
have a fertility doctor on or something too to talk about
that would
like
honestly
that,
fucking
but then
slap.
also fertility crisis and like IVF stuff since it's been in the news and everything.
We can
But
talk
yeah,
about that. Me and my wife had a long conversation about that the other night. But basically by the end, like, because you're ramping up the rate, by the end I'm like going pretty rapidly. It's not a really dramatic movement. It's like small pulls,
mm-hmm.
but you're doing them a lot to where it's basically it's like a little spin cycle almost for your belly, and it's just taking all the weight off of that ligament, right? and then it's shaking it to kind of get that tension out.
Sure.
And our midwives are talking about like, bro, you will fucking do a C-section, cut a broad open in that way, right? And take the baby out and then go to suture like the uterus. But that shit was spun up so many times, like it
Ooh.
had so many rotations wrapped
Mm-hmm.
around up in there, that by the time they come back with like the suture kit and they're looking at it, the place where the incision was is now spinned all the way back around and is
Oh,
on the
wow.
back side inside, and
I
they
never even
can't
thought
suture it.
about that.
To be totally honest, I don't even like understand the anatomy well enough to really even have a visual map of it. But
Yeah, I'm just thinking
but
about a baby kind of spinning you up inside a little bit. Like it just kind of moves
yeah,
around and you just kind of get twisted a little bit down
exactly.
there.
It's like a yo-yo where the string just gets
Yeah.
bound and bound and bound. And so the idea is just like, yeah, just like stretch a lot so that it's not doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And another big thing, get your shit lined up, get your shit symmetrical and straightened. So we're sending her to the chiropractor lately, which is a first time for either of us.
Nice.
Um,
How has it been? Good
just
experience or?
yeah, I mean, she was skeptical of it,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, they're just popping her shit back in place, and she was having just total like she was having some dramatic numbness in one of her legs from just like clearly like a little bit of obstruction or pinching of
Yeah.
like her sciatic nerve. Um, pretty much gone instantly. Um, and honestly, more than anything, just like feeling a little bit better with posture. I think the
Mm-hmm.
biggest thing is just get everything straight and symmetrical so that your body isn't getting in its own way when baby's coming out, right? Because
Yeah.
I think a friend of ours put it in a way that I really liked, and it sounds goofy. It is a goofy way of putting it, but it's a great way of thinking about it, honestly. Which is like your like your pussy just basically wants to burp the baby out, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's just burping it up like this kind of automatic muscle
Mm-hmm.
spasm or something, right? And I think that's a great way of thinking about it
Yeah.
because a lot of the time too, like I think people can overemphasize pushing, and then that can be
Oh,
more
that's a
damaging.
problem. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly right. And this idea of like, no, you're gonna push some amount, right? That's normal. Um, but just like you want to have as much of the burp doing it as possible,
Mm.
right? And in my mind, I recently, I don't know if I talked to you about this or not, but I had some really bad issues with my back a few weeks ago.
Mm.
And it was actually the most stressful part of this whole pregnancy
Is stress
so
related
far.
or did you do something?
I'm too sedentary. I work from home.
Oh,
I
yeah.
fucking
That'll do
sit
it.
at a computer all day, and then all of my hobbies are inside.
Yeah. I know
So
how that goes.
yeah, it's just not good, you know. And we're in a nesting phase, so like I'm getting out with the boys less, moving my
Yeah.
body less. Anyways, point is, um, it was to the point where like first hour of the day, I'm not really able to walk. Right, I'm hobbling around the house
Mm.
until I can get warmed up. It was really fucking bad. It was really bad, and I was scared. I was like, dude, like my wife's gonna be in bed for the first week after this happens,
You're
and
gonna
I
be
need to
in
like
bed too? Fuck.
no, exactly. Like, do we need to like this isn't gonna work? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? We're gonna need to hire a nurse or something. What is going on? And um, cleared it up, but just this idea of honestly, my buddy who you met, who's into naturopathy,
Oh, hell yeah.
he literally just like made a house call for me, came over, popped my back a few times, and was just like, you need to start walking this way, you need to start doing these stretches.
Nice.
Um, and it was good, but it really cemented for me that um, address the imbalances in
Mm.
your body, right?
Structural stuff.
Structural stuff. If I'm favoring one side, then years later I'm gonna wake up one fucking morning and that other side, I can't walk now. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like what happened to me. And you want
Mm-hmm.
to talk about like a stress test, right? Like giving birth, right? Like
Mm.
fucking, it's a straight fucking canal. You know what I mean? Like think about landing a plane on a runway that has a big curve on it.
Yeah.
You know, so just make it easy for yourself. And yeah, so that's the kind of shit we're doing. And the nice thing too is like you go to these fucking appointments, man. And I mean, I just want to intro this by saying that I've never done uh, the alternative, right? Most people do home birth and all of this stuff after their first experience, because basically what happens is they have a hospital birth. And you know, listen, um, this is very personal for a lot of people, so I don't want to, you know, say anything that makes anybody feel like bad or anything, right?
Yeah.
It's like a really vulnerable thing. But you know, you read a lot of shit. I mean, my wife reads a lot, and she's kind of been cluing me in on this. You know, I'll read little snippets here and there, and it's like you hear a really common trend of broads having um, experiences with childbirth that are basically equivalent to like a form of like sexual assault, basically, right? And and I'm generally I say that already being someone who can be skeptical of that way of framing things sometimes.
Yeah.
But like you just again, like I was telling you earlier, just like if you're pushing and a gaggle of interns come in and start talking
God.
about fucking, you know, The Bachelorette, um, and just staring at your vag like it's you know, a diagram on the wall,
Mm-hmm.
that it's not a crazy person thing to quantify that in emotional in psychic terms,
Yeah.
right? How do you think that feels? You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
again, I think it's on the husband to be like, I'm sorry, you need to get the fuck away from us.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
There's not a lot
and
of privacy in hospitals. That's a big thing about it. And hospitals are overall like a very harsh environment otherwise too.
100%. The last time I spent a couple nights in a hospital when I had an injury, there was just like a homeless junkie a couple beds over from me,
Mm, that's
just
fun.
like yowling basically. And I'm just
Yeah.
like, I don't like, I'm having like a deep existential experience of like, what the fuck I'm going to do with this experience I've just had.
Yeah.
And I'm just having, and you've just put me in pandemonium. Like I'm just in hell,
Yeah.
which honestly maybe was a good thing. Point is, it's been like great. Like one of the things I was most stressed about with this, and again, I'm not the guy who needs to burp a baby out of my pussy, but like,
Wouldn't that be something, dude?
I know.
Look at fucking TLC documentary made about you.
My pussy breaks while they're wheeling me out of the hospital.
Yeah.
Uh, dude, that jazz kid, by the way,
Oh
is like
my god,
still has a
dude.
show, I think, and is like morbidly obese now.
Really?
Uh,
I
yeah,
I
it's
saw something a couple years ago. I never even knew about that show, and I saw some tweet thread about it, and I like Googled it and looked at it for the first time, and I'm like, dude, the type of mental like gymnastics the parents have to be doing in order to like justify that at any capacity, it's so crazy. It's so you look at it and it's so obviously exploitation at the very least, and like some
it's fucked up.
Munchausen's kind of stuff going on, and just like
Here, check out this
child
picture.
abuse. Oh, picture. Oh my god, that kind of looks like okay. This kind of looks like the broad from the Monte Teo documentary that like there's the trans person from a Monte Teo documentary who he was a Notre Dame QB back in the day who had a fake girlfriend, and it was like a big news story. Uh, and his fake girlfriend was like a trans dude that was ended up being in his grade that catfished him. But it looks almost
Oh,
identical
I
to
remember
Jazz
that.
now, almost identical. Wow, yeah, that's a sign of like deep rooted trauma and like problems if you blow up like that. Like that's not, and also the hormones and shit. Who knows what it's doing to her body?
I was
God.
just gonna say, if somebody gains weight that dramatically, especially that quickly, like it's yeah, I mean, definitely like lifestyle for sure. That's got to be a part of it.
God.
But there's something going on hormonally at, you know, at that point. Point
That's
is,
insane. Looks like she's pregnant, dude. Jesus.
you mean he?
Yeah, them,
No,
it.
anyway. Um, no, the thing I was most worried about with this is, you know, I'm terrified of doctors. I
Yeah,
really don't like
God,
going to
dude.
the doctor. It really scares me.
Mm.
Went to my first doctor's appointment with a naturopath because my wife set that up, and that was nice of her. And it went really well. I got a clean bill
Yeah.
of health.
That's a
Um,
nice change of pace, probably going into your first like natural kind of doctor after just like being in
yep.
normal medicine and then kind of being scared of it. And then like I feel like
Well,
it's a nice way to reacclimate to
and the
taking care of
nice
your
thing
health.
is I'm used to it now because um as you know, like in pregnancy you go, I don't know, it's like once a month to these appointments, and then it's like once every 3 weeks, once every 2 weeks. We're weekly now. We're at weekly
Hmm.
appointments now. That was the least desirable aspect of this whole thing in my mind. I really thought it was going to be scary. Um, Working with a midwife, you just like walk in to a room with like a nice little armchair and like
Is it at an office, like at a doctor's office, or is it at like a midwife clinic or?
a midwife clinic. So it's just a little. I don't fucking know. It looks like where you would go for like a therapy session, basically.
Okay, sure.
And you just sit down, you just like talk to this nice lady, and they basically just ask you like how many dates you're eating a day, and like if you're fucking putting butter on your belly type of shit. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And then you like hear your baby's heartbeat, and they tell you that, I mean, at least in our case, that like everything's fucking sounding really great, and then they just send you on your way, and you like feel great the whole time. It's not stressful at all, and I just really can't imagine doing it any other way. Now, obviously, the big qualifier here, the big asterisk I need to put on here is basically haven't had the baby yet, right? So we'll see how it goes, right? But but so far, like if this basically goes off of that hitch, which I there's every reason to think it's gonna,
Yeah, God willing.
um, you know, excusing anybody that has like particular medical conditions that preclude them from doing something like this, I have no idea why anyone wouldn't go this route if
Yeah.
they weren't able to, which again describes like 90% of people, right? So
Hmm.
um
Yeah, I've
it's
been
also
on that.
it's also cheaper. That's the other big thing, right? Is that people always want to do the thing of being like, "Oh, wealthy white women have the ability to do," and it's like, no, like we're literally we literally don't have a lot of money, and this is, I don't know, like half the cost.
I mean, dude,
Uh,
a hospital stay alone for just the birth is a fuckload. So
I mean, you're
that's
looking at
huge.
like 10 grand
Yeah.
minimum, basically.
And that has
We're
nothing to do with like the lead up and stuff is like a bunch of you might have different doctors that they send you to different specialists for whatever kind of shit. Cuz like I feel like they just kind of there's a racket once you get into medical and they're like, "Yeah, you might as well go check out our guy in urology just to make sure the baby's going to pee right." Like just random shit like just stuff that you don't really need to do, but they just kind of push you around just to like fill up a docket of like medical tests that they could have you do just to kind of get more insurance bill or more money to build the insurance and stuff.
100% exactly. So so yeah, that's kind of the funny thing is it's just this it's like this with holistic solutions for any kind of thing, not just health related, where you're just kind
Yeah.
of like, man, like if I just don't want to go like the mainstream route of just like, please put me on a fucking conveyor belt and just kind of push me through the machine,
Mm-hmm.
so that I can kind of abdicate my responsibility and have you just kind of give me the easy answer. If I just like take on a little bit more responsibility, I can just have a much better experience. It's kind
Yeah.
of like, I say this as someone who literally doesn't know how to drive manual. It's kind of like driving like how a manual transmission is, like you're getting more out of the car,
Yeah.
um, and you need to just get a little more used to a little bit more of a hands-on uh, experience, but then
Yeah.
like it is rewarding, right? And once you learn it, it's like, this isn't crazy. Like what's crazy is just spending years and years not learning this thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. This is just kind of fundamentals. It feels like once you get it down. Um,
Exactly. So I mean, it'll be fun, I guess, hearing my debrief after the experience happens, because
oh,
it's
I'm
like
very intrigued. Yeah.
it's gonna be fucking intense. But
I
I think
worked for a long time in like an acupuncture clinic that specialized with fertility and like that was the primary focus of the clinic and so they would see people kind of the same way, almost acting like a midwife or in tandem with a midwife. Sometimes the midwives would come, and it would either be people that are just going through their first pregnancy, or maybe people that had miscarried before, or people that are going through IVF, or any of these other kind of fertility treatments. Maybe they're just taking some different types of medication and stuff. But either way, they would they would see them, and they would see them once a week or once every 2 weeks, kind of like you were talking about, where it would get more frequent as it gets closer to the birth. And most of the people's feedback was that like the experience doing that, going to like the acupuncturist and having that more naturopathic kind of approach towards childbirth, if they were having uneasiness or whatever, they would just prescribe them some like herbal tea blends and stuff like that. Or like, obviously they had also, fish oil, castor oil, kind of that kind of stuff too. But they basically would just kind of have a way more natural approach to it. And it was a lot less stressful, it seemed, for a lot of the people, especially the people who were already going through a like fertility treatment where they're maybe seeing doctors for, you know, doing so many different stages of IVF, and then they're getting shipped around to all these different places, maybe going out of state or whatever. Um, you could see there was like a relief of just coming to like someone that was not a fucking doctor's office, and people who were just going to kind of sit down and approach it from a more, I don't know, holistic manner, and like meaning just like taking everything into account and actually like um, not just trying to get you in to do like a very cookie cutter pre-programmed kind of set of things that they do for everyone. It's like a little bit more um, personal because you have a little bit more say, a little bit more involvement in it. So I think that like I've been very interested about this whole thing about doing the natural birth. It's like I think it's probably the right thing to do. Obviously, I have no stake in it at all. So I mean, God bless. But um, I like it. I'm definitely interested to hear what you say about it. And I also have like a deep rooted distrust in hospitals as well, anyways. So it kind of dovetails right with that.
Yeah, just specifically about the holistic stuff you're saying.
Yeah, but or just about doing the home birth and not wanting to go and do that in the hospital, and like not wanting to have a whole like team of student interns or whatever just barge in at a vulnerable moment.
Yeah, the one of the big things I was thinking about when we were early on, like I was saying, it's like kind of in line with that point I made about like most thinking and feeling I've done about this was months before it even happened, right? One of the main things I was thinking about was like, I don't want my child's first experience to just be like looking up at the ceiling in just this being caught by people we'll never see again in our lives and
Mm-hmm.
looking up at this horrible uh, kind of like industrial ceiling of this antiseptic, fucked up, creepy building
Yeah,
that I hate being in. Right? It
fluorescent light.
exudes. Yeah, it exudes this menacing aura. I hate it, and I don't want that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's something like really special about being like, okay, baby's out. You know, I mean, barring basic stuff like little immediate cleanup and like delivering the placenta. Like baby's out, baby's on mom. We are now putting them in our bed and
Yeah.
letting them go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And the furthest we've got to go is just to the bed. You
Mm-hmm.
know, we can then come downstairs, watch a little TV. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like we don't. That's it. And that's it. For some reason, I had this great anxiety about just how like traumatizing it would be to be in the hospital to go through this like incredibly profound and this dramatic thing, this cathartic experience, and then basically to just be like told like, all right, take your shit, get the fuck out,
Yeah.
right? And somebody we know who had that experience, um, it was basically like they used this metaphor of like it's like having this doctor come up to you and be like, okay, here's the keys to your helicopter, go ahead and fly home.
Yeah.
And him just being like, I don't really know like how to fly a helicopter, what are you talking about? And them just being like, well, it's your helicopter, so there you go. um I don't know, like I don't I mean, this is dumb. This is a dumb thing I'm copying to, and this is the top thing on my checklist. But I haven't really even figured out like fully how to get the car seat set up in my car because it's a little weird. Um, I like don't really want to like an hour or two after my daughter is born.
Just have to put her in the car immediately.
No, yeah, no, exactly. I'd like a couple. I mean, I don't know. You probably you go out and you do things, but like I want a little bit of time
I mean,
before we
yeah.
christen the car seat, you know?
And before you start launching your child around at 45 miles per hour, dude, what the fuck?
Exactly. Well, that's another thing. So we're potentially, and this is, I mean, me and my wife fucking argue and fight all the time, and it's one of my favorite aspects of our relationship, unironically. Um, but like, and this is an example of it, is there's a trip coming up that's like 2 months after the baby's birth. And again, keep in mind, this is 2 months, really more like 2 months after the projected due date. So
Yeah.
it'll be pretty soon. And we're talking about flying out to the East Coast for a family thing. It's an important thing. It's an obligation. I like really don't like the idea of putting my kid that early in a fucking tube full of strangers with all these germs, right?
Yeah.
Especially with the fact that like I don't even know if we're gonna vaccinate at all.
Based.
And having a bunch of radiation be hit my baby and shit like that. I don't like it. I don't like it. And
Yeah,
it also doesn't
I don't
help.
either. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, well, no, and none of the boys that I've talked to, none of my boys are like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Everyone just has the Lindy thing of just being like, yeah, that like kind of just intuitively seems like something you shouldn't do.
Yeah.
At the same time, one of the things that's great about women is that they are like kind of crazy about this shit, and they'll just be like, nah, that's a thing you can do with a baby when they're like 5 minutes old, and
That's so true.
it'll be like bungee jumping and like fucking, you know, like they'll just be like, yeah, you can just like deadlift with a baby, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? And
I
they're
saw
like,
a
it's
lady.
fine.
I saw a lady carrying a baby around just by its fucking arm the other day. Like she was just like
Right.
slinging it around. I mean, and it's not good behavior or good parenting, but she obviously
But
was like, "This is gonna be fine."
you can get away with it, right?
Yeah.
So I don't like that.
No.
Um, but I forget how I even got on that point. But
Well, you're just talking about like the kind of the trauma of having to like get out of the hospital and like after like a
yeah,
big birth experience and just hop in a car and stuff and like traveling with a baby, how that's kind of just like a little bit of a that's kind of a big step. Like
well,
I
and
think
hear me out
it's
here too. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say I think it's nice you get to have the baby at home and it doesn't need to drive around for a little while. It can like learn like about life and the earth like without going 45 miles per hour within its first day. Like you know what I mean? It can kind of just take it at a more normal speed.
Exactly, and this is a little bit of a segue, but it just reminds me because we're talking about the like trauma and what you're comfortable with, and you know, it's such a loaded concept. But like, you know, on a similar note, like kind of in another way, like I was talking to somebody who's like a recent father the other day, and they kind of said something that kind of rubbed me the wrong way, and it kind of uh, started a conversation between me and my wife that was interesting, which is he was basically talking to me about. Well, I'm going to intro this by basically saying this is a whole type of topic that people do, which is normies. Whenever normies talk about men as an abstract concept, um, you can basically assume what that topic is going to be about, and it's basically always just going to be like men should feel like they can talk about their heckin' feelings, right? Like that's the only time
Uh,
we can ever talk about capital M men as like a thing that actually exists, you know, as opposed to like
yeah.
some oppressive social structure, right? Like the only conversation about men is just about how they're not allowed to yada yada yada, right? Um and it was kind of one of those, and he's talking to me, and um, this is a couple who had a difficult birthing experience,
Mm.
basically in labor for several days, and which is insane for the record. Okay, that's like borderline malpractice, and
How
labor
does
for
that happen? How do you like remain in labor for that long? Is that just like there's a
it,
complication that pops up, or?
from what I understand, and I've talked to these people, so I don't think there's some big X factor that I'm missing here. I think basically like you're literally just like not hitting up your fucking midwives to show up and like give you the fucking castor oil,
Oh
basically.
wow, yeah.
Um there's shit you can do. I mean, we've had
Hmm.
these conversations now, right? Like especially because we're expecting to be late, right? Because it's the first. And so like, nah, like there's like interventions that we'll do.
To induce labor.
Exactly, in a natural way,
Yeah.
right? Because especially because if you're doing it like in a naturopathic way, you're not getting pitocin, you're not getting artificial pitocin
Hmm.
shot or whatever. Um, you're taking herbs, you're doing the castor oil, you're
Yeah.
doing different types of massages and shit like that. The pitocin um, causes kind of this like this cascade effect, which basically statistically skyrockets the amount of interventions hospitals do,
Oh
right?
wow.
It becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy because a lot of the time they're just running on this self-imposed time crunch, doctors are. And so it's like, all right, let's get you going, let's get you into full game time labor, give you the pitocin, kickstart those contractions. Then one thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another, and they've just made a perfectly healthy labor into a C-section
Yeah.
because they're just not there to actually have healthful outcomes so much as
Mm.
just like not catastrophic outcomes,
Right.
which is really the goal of community health, and it's fucking useless for that reason.
Yeah.
Anyways, so this person's in labor for days.
Hmm.
Anyways, the guy's talking to me, and I'm trying to be. I'm going to be vague because I'm also about to say something that's kind of mean, and this is someone I know, so whatever. But basically, they're talking to me, and this guy's talking to me, and he's like, and then we finally got to the hospital after this, and I just like let myself just like not be okay, and just like let the doctors take over, and it's like it's
Oh,
okay to just like not be okay. It's
nah,
like
you
that
gotta
whole
be
thing.
okay, dog. What the fuck? You're
No,
bringing life into
no,
this world. Get your shit, put it aside, figure it out, dude. Your
no,
wife
no,
could be not
no,
okay. She could be screaming, but you gotta be there, figure it out.
no, exactly. So okay, so first of all, if your wife's in labor for over 3 fucking days, you've failed in some really profound way as like her husband,
Hmm.
in like fucking intervening,
And
right?
advocating actively.
Um, and second, just the thing that puts okay, because obviously the immediate reaction is, quit being a fucking pussy, right?
Yeah.
But like the deeper reaction that's a little bit more constructive and not just name calling is
But sometimes
you've
the
like
name calling is okay. Sometimes it's needed.
yep,
Like that's something that kept us in line for a little while. But I digress. Keep going.
it's a good system. No, you're right. I mean, the more thoughtful way of unpacking it is you've figured out a way. You've intellectualized your way. Not really. I mean, there's nothing intellectual about this stupid platitude about men being sensitive. It's just the dominant ideology. You don't
Pseudo
own this. You don't
intellectual.
own this concept. You're just regurgitating it ad
Yeah.
nauseum. But if I want to be nice about it, you've intellectualized. I'm not even going to say that. No, you've found a way of basically just robbing yourself of a constructive perspective and framework around this profound growing experience that happened in your life that may not
Yeah.
happen again, right? You went through a watershed moment, and this is like a big thing for me is it's not a given that you'll learn the right lessons from
Oh my
challenging
god.
experiences in your life,
No. Yeah.
right? You can be a lot, and a lot of people do. You should be a fucking brain dead pinball and
Mm-hmm.
get bounced around and have difficult things happen and take the exact opposite lesson than you should
Yep. Many do.
constantly.
God, many
Many
people do.
do. It's like wisdom to be able to,
Discern
because
the
like in
difference.
yeah, because like in kind of a postmodern way, it is like you need to kind of construct the story of that truth, right? I know
Yeah.
it's like funny to be like, oh, my personal truth, that's so dumb, but it's like there's something to that,
Mm-hmm.
right? And just this idea of like, what's the truth you're going to construct about this story of the birth of your child. And the fact that you just defaulted to still just being like, well, as a man, it's really good for me to be able to just not be okay. And it's like, you are robbing yourself of something so fucking vital. And like, in my mind, it's like, I keep thinking about this stuff as like a non-hallucinogenic way of kind of traveling into like ego death.
Yeah, I
You know
mean,
what I mean?
absolutely is that. It's small challenges against the ego, and things are like growth experiences and like mini trials. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and like, and just like, I love, um, so I'm really good under pressure. That's like a weird trait of mine. I don't really understand it. I don't love like giving myself compliments in this way, so it's quite out of the norm. But
Yeah.
just saying it in a kind of an objective way, like, I'm kind of an anxious person,
Hmm.
and that can make me kind of incompetent at certain basic things that are mundane. But like, there was like a house fire a couple years ago, and everyone's just standing
Oh, is
around
this
with
on
their
the 4th of July?
yeah, exactly. And I like fucking just locked in. You just do the whole thing,
Yeah.
right? And everybody, and I don't know what it is. I think like in another life, maybe if I wasn't an alcoholic, I could have been like an EMT or something, right?
Yeah, fireman or
Um,
something.
but there's just something about just that, like, the situation's so shitty right now. I can just turn off that part of my brain that is like that is qualitatively observing what's happening,
Oh yeah.
and I can just focus on on just what to do, and
Mm-hmm.
then you know, and then afterwards I can unpackage it on all of
Yeah.
those other ways, and it's really easy for me to do. It just happens natural, right?
It's like healthy dissociation. I was someone, I think, who had problems with dissociation throughout my childhood, that I think it was something I was very easily able to do and susceptible towards. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that I didn't really know it for a long period of time. So it led to a lot of issues where I'd be like just zoned out or whatever, like not involved or like, stuff like that at random times, daydreaming in class, whatever kind of thing. But I think once I kind of realized that about myself and was able to get a little bit better manage on it and like put the forefront of focus on being present in those moments when you have to kind of tap into that for a moment, it's easier because it's like, oh yeah, I know dissociation, but I can like dissociate to a level that's actually healthy and helpful in this scenario. Like I don't have to be tied into the actual emotional turmoil of like the shifting things that are occurring in this situation. It's like this thing's happening right now. We can sit around and like cry about it all we want or freak out about it all we want, but that's not helping anything. So it's like I need to like for a second just figure out what's the actual reality of the situation and like what are the steps that need to be taken and how do we implement that, because like you look around, you're like 90% of these people aren't going to do that, so someone's kind of got
Yep.
to. And I think that
And
that's kind of what it is.
yeah, and it's similar. It's not exactly what I'm talking about here in this like story, but it's a similar kind of thing where it's just that like um because I feel like that's like what we're describing is a little bit more like lizard brained, you know,
Yeah.
of just like I'm gonna power down one system so that I can focus on this other system in my
Yeah.
brain. Whereas like it's a similar end goal, or it's a similar effect in the end, but I think it feels a little bit different um, of just this like um, I mean, basically, it's really simple thing. The solipsism and narcissism of being able to take a situation where your wife and child are in crisis
Make it about you.
and somehow, you know, exactly, and somehow have the takeaway be about not even just you, but about something so fucking frivolous as
Mm.
just like being comfortable allowing yourself, whatever that even fucking means, right? To just like have some tired fifis in
Mm.
the hospital is like, bro, and especially because like I'm like hot off the heels of like reading these stories about women that are like, you know, there's like old fucking like midwifery shit my wife has been on lately from like the 70s, like
Midwifery.
I know, like Ina May, this broad Ina May, who's really big, like just like this like 70s, these like 70s books, and people talking about how like childbirth has like a big component of it that's actually really sexual that no one talks about because it's
Mm.
taboo. And like in that light, just being like, a lot of these chicks is like describing these bad hospital experiences as like practically being raped,
Yeah.
right? And it's just like, bro, you're just like talking to me like in that context. And this is me being a crazy person, right? I'm not saying that that's literally what happened or anything, but it's just like I have a head full of this shit.
Yeah, you're like, your
And
wife
then
got
this person,
raped and your baby too, and you're worried
no,
about me feeling uncomfortable.
no, exactly. Like, and then to turn and hear somebody just be like, I think it was just so nice to like let this like doctor just take over for me, and I could just melt into a puddle. And I'm just like,
Cuck.
literally, you're gonna die when winter comes. You're gonna
Yeah.
fucking die. Yeah, cuck, dude. No, exactly. And it's just like literally like my child is gonna be stronger and faster than yours, and they're gonna fucking eat your child.
Yeah.
And
Holy shit.
I'm being a psycho now, but like.
No, but I mean,
But
you kind of got to have a little bit of that.
I think that this has been another one of my takes is I think that having kids is low key dog uh, like a big self-improvement strategy.
Definitely.
Because I think about like the amount of shit that our parents just like drug us along to go do when we were kids, and then I think about like the fact that their lifestyles probably didn't include any of that shit, and that they probably just did a lot of like sitting at home watching TV,
Yeah.
or like just going to the bar and getting a beer type shit.
Mm-hmm.
And like what they're actually doing is like it's that monologue from Kill Bill Part 2 where he's talking about like Clark Kent isn't like authentically who Superman is. Like Superman is Superman. He's Kal-El. Clark Kent is like his approximation of
Yeah.
like what a person would be, right? It's like him. It's an alien's critique of what a man would be,
Yeah.
right? And like, and that's like that's who our parents were
To
when we were
us.
young.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
like they're playing by the sheet music.
Like, this is
That
what a dad
they
is
weren't.
supposed to be doing.
No, exactly, dude, bro. Your dad wasn't going to the fucking park and like
Just
playing with
playing
the
ball with the neighborhood kids.
exactly, like none of this shit was part of his life. That's not. He wasn't like that. You
Yeah.
know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like your dad was fucking holding his balls watching TV
Yeah.
and fucking drinking a beer and watching the game with his friends. He wasn't like going out with his friends and like playing catch, you know what I mean? Or like going to a Boy Scouts function, you know,
Mm-hmm.
all of that shit was them. But that's the thing is that like that's good for them,
Of
right?
course,
And
it's good for them.
that's the cheat code. That's the cheat code is that it's like you're not being a fucking slob. You're like going and doing healthy person shit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's tricking. It's like it's almost like it's the like, oh, baby needs to eat their medicine. Here comes the train, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like mom and dad need to like have their healthy lifestyle
Constructive
activities. And
hobbies
so
and
we're gonna
stuff. Yeah.
exactly. So we're gonna slip it in under the guise of being good for the kid, and it's like no, it's like it's good for everybody.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, that's
and
the
so I've
thing.
been
Like,
thinking
you
about
can see
that.
dads that get more into t-ball than the kids. You know, like that's a big thing.
Oh, dude, I'm gonna be a fucking psycho about that shit, dude. Because
God, yes, dude.
I'm like, it's gonna be. So I don't like sports, right?
Yeah.
I only dislike sports less than I dislike people that like say sports ball.
Oh,
But
dude.
like sports is pretty gay, especially these days. Like it's just kind of like a vessel for neo-colonial
Oh,
ideology.
yeah. I mean,
But
it's just capital on like just fucking steroids, literally on steroids. Yeah.
exactly, and you're someone who like enjoys watching sports.
Oh,
Like
I do, but they're crushing the heart of the game actively every single day. But yeah.
it's pretty intense, right? And but like it's important to me that like you know kid has like a discipline that they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So you're gonna learn piano,
Yes,
right?
God, yeah.
And you have a physical discipline too. You're gonna play a team sport,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or like even like you're gonna do weight training.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you're like gonna figure this shit out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
and
that's
so
a
I'm
great
like,
idea.
yeah, I'm like gonna be like big into that shit, and I'm totally gonna be a fucking hypocrite about it because they're gonna be like, "What did you do, Dad?" And I was like, "I fucking sat around for all of high school just smoking weed and reading
Yeah.
comic books."
But that's the
And like,
thing. It's like, yeah, but you gotta be better than I was.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, no, exactly. Like you're gonna be like a little Ubermensch version of me. Like, can you imagine
Yeah.
with how amazing I am now? Can you
Yeah.
imagine if I had actually done anything correct?
Yeah, if I made all the right steps, so, like, along the way in childhood, and that's what I'm doing for you, son. That's crazy. I like
You're
that,
trying.
though. I think that that's how a lot of people kind of whether or not that's a good thing, it's kind of up in the air for individual interpretation, but I think a lot of people kind of, like,
What's a
with
good thing?
um, I think that people, when they have kids, they do, like, a reverse hyperstition where they're like, "I gotta, like, try to make you do all the right things in childhood because then it's like it makes up for when I was just making the wrong choices a lot of the time." And I don't know that it's always conscious that way, but I think there's a drive where it's like you want your kid to be better off than you. You want your kid to be smarter and make better decisions than you. You want to provide for them maybe better than your parents did. It's kind of like the general
I
thing
think
that people go into it with.
I think that it's an evergreen. I think it's kind of a transcendent pattern.
Yeah.
That's just a part of existence, right? Like it is a truth.
Hmm.
There's a truth to that. It is an ontological reality of that. That like I've continued through you, and I will iteratively try to improve in those ways. And like anything, it has a good side and a bad side to it. I think that people, because we're in such a deconstruction minded culture, everybody has a negative model for what that looks like,
Yeah.
without acknowledging that like that is just simply a natural thing,
Hmm.
and there's tons of good things that come out of it. And I don't think it's rocket science to basically just go like, you just got to call the balls as you're seeing them, right? You
Yeah.
can't just make these generalizations and go like, I'm not gonna put all these expectations on my kid. And I mean, this is a lot of conversations I have with like normie parents that I know, is they'll be like, and I know that's kind of a mean thing to say about people that I like care about, but
Yeah, all
like,
my
but
friends are
just as
fucking normies, dude.
fucking normies, but like, it's okay. It's all my wife's friends. No, I'm just
Uh,
kidding. I'm kind of not kidding, but they're really good people, but um, very fine people,
on both
uh,
sides.
on both sides. Well, just on her side, but no, just this idea of like, I find them actually being a lot more rigid and making like universal judgments
Mm.
on this kind of stuff than me, where it's like, I'm absolutely not going to put any kind of expectations on my kid at all, yada yada
Well,
yada.
that's
And
nuts.
no, exactly. And it's like, it's just one of these things of like, look, man, like, especially because straight up, like, this idea that a lot of this stuff is hung on of just being like, they are who they are, and
Yeah, yeah.
I just want them to reveal that to me. It's like, like, not really. That's like kind of not really it. Like, they're like, there's gonna be a lot of the content of what they're expressing to you is kind of just
Fed
like
back
a
you and your environment back to you.
no, exactly. You're just looking at like a funhouse mirror version of
Yeah.
yourself. Like, it's like that funhouse mirror that like makes you look really short, like a midget.
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
that's
it's a
just that's
child
just your
mirror.
kid. That's just your kid, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just like, is there really anything like super profound they're telling you, or is this just like a retarded way of restating all the shit you've been feeding them?
It's like little
Um,
AI.
no, exactly. And so like we socialize people to kind of be built up into the citizens we want them to be. And yes, there
Which
are things that are born into them, and that's an important thing to
that's a pretty
acknowledge.
postmodern take there, Slav.
Okay, to be honest, here we go. I feel like we're talking about my kid, so I know I'm talking a lot this episode, and I apologize a little bit, but
No, I think it's
for
good. It's all good stuff.
thank you.
And
Well,
we're here on the precipice of it. I mean, so it's like it's the most pressing thing right now. It's more important than the election.
that's very well. Many things are, to be honest, but
Yeah.
for as right wing involved as I've been in everything, like I was thinking about this recently, because every so often, like, you do want to do the check in of being like, what is my sense of self
Yeah.
with this stuff,
Where am I at?
and it's very like, it's good to have the habit of occasionally doing that, right? Because that's like a neoliberal spook, to
Oh,
like get.
constantly be fixated on that?
Yeah, like there
Yeah.
are large swaths of people that's their only sense of interacting
Oh
and
my god.
interfacing with the political, is just like what what fashion am I wearing right now?
Right.
But at the same time, like, you should do that a little bit.
I mean,
And I
personal
think about it, and I think
inventory.
about my exactly. And I kind of lay everything out on the table, and you kind of take inventory, like you just said. It's a great word. And it's like, I am just a postmodernist. Like, I am.
Yeah.
I just am. And it's just, it's like, it just makes the most sense. It reminds me a lot of like Oren's thing about just like, there's no way through, but there's no way
God.
out of this but through it. And
Yeah.
like, like, nobody's going to be unchanged by that, right? And I like it's the Dugan thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of Dugan being like, okay, so like, we've allowed God to die, and truth, that's basically what it means, right? Truth has been displaced, and
Yeah.
it's been shattered into a million pieces. And so now, because it's been disassembled, we can put Humpty Dumpty back together again and have an understanding of what each of these disparate parts were for in the
Oh
first
yeah,
place.
of
And we
course.
can understand adopting a truth that is really like the substrate underneath it, the reason for the truth in the first place. We can choose a truth that
Yeah.
is the most pro-social and is the
Mm-hmm.
most useful for our ends, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
And it
um
may
and
look like the forms that existed previously, and more like we may be just rebuilding a lot of things from the past, but it's like with a more holistic and like a conscious understanding of them, which I think is an
exa-
important thing. Like the consent.
exactly. And you can see like microcosm, because we're talking about a macro thing, but we can see microcosms of this with like in religion, right? I mean, I just came from
Mm-hmm.
church a couple hours ago, and like in religion, right? Like adult converts in Catholicism, or probably any religion, right? Well, not any religion, any form of Christianity, I'll say, are like obviously like a lot more zealous than, cradle
Yeah,
Catholics and shit
of
like that,
course.
right?
It's a
And it's this
conscious
idea,
decision.
exactly. And like Marshall McLuhan, right, which like fittingly, he's a scholar of James Joyce, and so he becomes a Catholic later on in life.
Mm.
Not that James Joyce was a Catholic, but is very informed by that culture. Becomes an adult convert, and his whole phrase was like, adult converts have come in through the back door,
Yeah.
right? Like, they know, they're almost kind of reading the story from the beginning first,
Mm-hmm.
right? You know where it gets you. And so therefore, and it's this interesting thing I think about, just the phrase, right? We hear it a lot in the mass, but like the mystery of faith,
Yeah.
right? There's the mystery to it, right? The Holy Ghost, right? There's this X factor, which is the grout between the tiles, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of ways of quantifying that. I think that in one way, it's just being able to uh, hold like the rational and the irrational, um, two conflicting directions in your head at
Yes.
once,
It's
and that
dialectical.
mental, exactly, that mental, but there's not even like I guess, I mean, it is kind of dialectical, but I almost wonder if like it's something beyond a synthesis, right? It's
Yeah.
just like, that's why we have like a triune God, is because
Mm-hmm.
it's like there's no stage in history where like the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost become one again, right? Like, no, they exist in this balance.
Yeah.
And like, point is, what is the point? Hold on. Let me
Taking the
let me
back
get this
door.
really fast. Taking the back door. How do you okay, God is dead, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is, I think that I feel like this is a banger metaphor. God is dead, and we're looking at him on this autopsy table,
Mm-hmm.
right? With all his fucking guts taken out, and they're in jars of formaldehyde, and you can see, you know, his retinas and his stomach and his spleen and his circulatory system and his nerves and shit like that. And how do you, and you can see how it works. You can
Yeah.
see how God works, right? And you can see that like this machine, when it was put together and it was functional, was a functioning body, and it had good effects, right?
Yeah.
Like when this body was a person, it was a person that made beautiful art,
Yeah.
right? Well, how do you put Humpty Dumpty back together again, right? You can't just start shoving the innards
Yeah.
back into him. And it's that, I think I've heard Bap talk about this, where he's like, you can't just like have this like you can't just like go to a religion and just have that analytical, totally logical,
Right.
self-aware view of it, because it saps all the magic, right?
Yeah.
And I think that is the postmodern version of that mystery of faith, where it's just like, I'm doing this because I like kind of logically know that like it has good outcomes at the end of it. And I'm going to fake it till I make it and tell myself these things because really, realistically, on some basic level, as a postmodernist, I'm looking at this thing I'm doing as like a social technology that I'm engaging in. And it's like a very it's a body on a examination table, and it's like awful. It's like kind of profane, right?
Hmm.
And how do I rectify that? And it's this huge, really complicated process, and I'm still in the middle of it. Um, but I think like that's the challenge in like the journey of like of just like the postmodern meta. It's postmodern, it's meta modern,
Yeah.
right? It's that like I'm moving past that postmodern. It doesn't even mean anything toward like I'm postmodern, but I'm also like the master of my like fate,
Hmm.
and
It's
I'm
like
going to do something about it,
it's
I
like
guess.
hopefully whatever's after postmodernism. Like it's still postmodern. It's like rooted in postmodernism, this kind of outlook, but it is like more of like a constructive rather than deconstructive view. Like it's a postmodernism where it's like rooted in the deconstruction, and it kind of is coming from that mindset, and it's seeing the results of deconstruction, and then kind of saying like, okay, well now it's time to reconstruct and kind of construct something actively. And so I think it's still postmodern, but it's not. I don't think it's like a purely postmodern as it's like understood typically. Like I think it's like an attempt to move beyond just the endless deconstruction. Um, so yeah, I think your metaphor with the body on the table is very mechanical, materialistic, which was it was like I get where you're coming from. I think that it's a good metaphor. But it was like with the subject matter you're talking about, putting it was very kind of material way of looking at it. But I think that it kind of is a good way to do that metaphor um, when you're talking about kind of a postmodern approach to religion, where it's like you're not really coming in from the mystical awareness of unity and that kind of thing. More so, just like this is a thing that I know provides a meaningful purpose that is from all signs transcendent as well. But I'm functionally concerned with it being like a good social technology mostly, um,
Hmm.
which I think is definitely a more material kind of outlook on it. But I think that's a good like that's a if you're going to I think that's one way to kind of bridge the gap. At least I think that's the way to like that's one way of opening the door to people who may be like you're saying kind of adult converts that were raised in a more secular way. I think that's like a way of getting to the water to drink, if you will, without it being like you needed a near death experience or whatever. Like I think you can think your way into the right position, but I don't think you can think your way to God. So I think it's like you can think your way to the back door, but then there's like
I think
something that
you
has to be put down. You have to
Yeah.
stop thinking in order to like actually walk through the back door, and that's like a
I think you
conscious
can.
decision.
I'm sorry, I'm like being really rude and interrupting you
Oh, you're
because I've
fine.
talked so
You're
much.
fine.
I think that you can think your way to entertain to I think you can think your way to the crossroad. But
Yeah.
at the crossroad there's still that moment of surrender. And for
Hmm.
me, right, I know that I have a certain connection and an interest in mysticism,
Yeah.
right? And I'm really interested in which is funny because like that's kind of the irony of the fact that like I'm Catholic instead of like Orthodox, I guess, because like Orthodox does kind of do it the way that I'm
Puts it
most
front and
interested
center.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that. I love the weird shit. I love scaring the
Yeah,
Protestants.
scaring the hose.
It's so fun, and like just the fact that it's like all the dumb Reddit shit of like, oh, biblically accurate angels, whoa, and they're just in a constant state of like arguing against like evangelicals. Whereas
Yeah.
like you just like walk into like a fucking Orthodox church, and they just have like a seraphim
Hmm.
portrayed, you know, around they just have the trippy shit front and center, and it's
Yeah.
like, yes, like what do you? This is old news, right?
I was
Um,
talking with my parents about that a lot. I went home a couple of weekends ago because we had a show back home and stayed with my
cool.
parents for a couple of days, and it was all like a good visit and stuff. But we got into a couple of like real deep talks about just they're Protestants and raised me in Presbyterian church, and I've now kind of come back into the church, but I go to Orthodox, and so I
Have
have
you
a
been going to
different,
the Orthodox Church?
yeah. So
Hey, good for you, buddy.
yeah, thank you, man. But I have a different kind of approach to it all. Like kind of like you're talking about, you come in the back door as like an adult convert. Me, someone who was like raised in it and then left the church and then came back through a different door, if you will, a side door kind of thing.
Mhm.
It's a different perspective, I think, than kind of what typical Protestants would hold, or like my parents kind of hold. And we were trying to get. It was all really good, constructive conversation where it's like, I'm trying to like help bridge the gap a little bit between like what their view of things is as mine, and kind of say like it's the same thing and everything. But yeah, there was a lot of moments where I was like, yeah, it's just like you got to kind of really delve into like the mystery and all this, and it was kind of there. It was kind of
Protestants
like
don't
a
like
couple of
that.
times ships in the night. Yeah, yeah.
Well, Protestants don't like that because, like, I remember last time I talked to a relative of mine who's also Presbyterian.
Hmm.
Um, I kind of talked about like I like the weird stuff, I like the trippy stuff, I like the mysticism stuff, and they got really really concerned by that, and they're like, you really got to be careful with that, and they start talking about fucking Gnosticism
Right.
um and I mean, sola scriptura is the big thing for them that
Yes.
really breaks their brain as far as this goes, which is just this idea that undergirds it. As far as I don't know, I like wasn't there for the Reformation. I'm not a Protestant, so I don't have a super um, deep relationship with sola scriptura, but I do know basically the relationship that individuals that I talk to a lot about it have with it, and it's basically what undergirds it for them is basically just um, the Bible is simple. It's simple, and that's it. What it says is what it says.
Yeah,
That's it.
literalist.
There's no sophistry around it. Well, and like it goes beyond literalists, right? Because obviously like the Bible, well, it's a lot of that, but like obviously like the Bible it's a library, not a book, right? There's that whole
Yeah.
point that you make, right? And it spans genre, right? And so whether or not you're being literal is like fucking irrelevant for like
Yeah.
huge portions of the Bible, right? Huge portions of all these books, right? Um, but just this idea of like this is really simple and straightforward, and what it says is what it says, and that's like I have a hard time responding to that because it's so on its face dumb. Like
Well,
it's
yeah.
so on its face dumb to read. Like I would literally try to read Finnegan's Wake without like a reading guide. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like honestly, like read Moby Dick without like a guide or something
Yeah.
like that. Like um just the mere fact that there are so many different denominations of Protestant Christianity
Hmm.
basically completely contradict the point they're making,
Yeah.
that like
Right.
what it's saying is just what it's saying,
Hmm.
right? um and um
It takes away
and
all the
yeah.
transformative power, or not all of it. I think you can get. I think there's people that. I think that there are people that have a legitimate connection to spirit through that, and that's a
So okay,
legitimate path.
dude, okay,
But
so it's straight up magic is real. Okay,
hmm,
magic is real, and the mystery part is where the magic exists,
yeah,
right? Do you believe that there's magic or not, right? there is. Magic obviously does exist, and that's not like against Christian thought or teaching or anything like that. Magic is fucking real. If you are just really like, if you are taking out all the mystery, you have missed the point of magic. Um, and it sucks. It sucks.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, just the I don't need. I understand. I don't want to belabor this point because it wasn't my main point, but just to go back to the sola scriptura thing, it's just interesting because it's also like I understand where they're coming from with it, which is basically it's a fancy way of actually just saying I don't want a go
Yeah.
between me and the word of God. I basically don't want to have like a bureaucratic go between for me, which
Hmm.
again is funny because they have pastors.
Right.
Um,
But looking at it
you,
in a historical context, I mean, like, I think you have to say, like, it makes sense where they're coming from. Like, I think, there was a lot of stuff going on where people were, like, buying what, I don't know, what trinkets and shit in order to, like, help, their, as penance and stuff like that. There was a bunch of stuff going on where it's like, there's obviously misuses of power. And so there's, like, this overreaction that's done where it's like, okay, we just need to knock out all structure and eliminate it down to like
oh, 100%.
justification
Well,
by faith alone, and like it's just about that. It's just about you and like your personal understanding with this, and it's like just
I
about what's on the paper.
Yep. Well, I think like well, the funniest thing now too though is like with shit like the prosperity gospel and stuff like that. Like like you as like practicing like orthodoxy, we're still like basically of the one church, right?
Yeah,
You're just like in schism, and so you're only in partial communion. But like it's still the idea that we are members of a church that was founded by Christ, and like that's it's like we're like the street team for the apostles. You know what I
yeah,
mean? We're
yeah,
we're in the organization, right? Okay, the one church like is able to exercise authority, and so you don't struggle with hucksters like people with a prosperity gospel that are still basically doing that penance shit of like buy daddy another Rolls Royce so that you can get into heaven type
yeah.
shit, right? And so I mean, who's really there's obviously a good reason for it in the beginning, and there's really for most opinions in the world there's some
I mean, it's the
angle to it there's truth.
postmodernism thing, right? It's like what we were talking about with postmodernism, where it's like, yeah, it's like there's been a lot of on destability that's been caused through like deconstruction and stuff, but like ultimately there's no way out but through. So like there kind of needed to be some deconstruction in different areas. I think of the Reformation as being just an extension of that. Obviously, it's like Enlightenment thinking kind of sprung from that, and around that, it's like a deconstructive force, but within the religious context.
Right.
And I don't think that it
Right.
means it led us to a good place or that it was like uh, based on the right foundations. But I think it's like, I think you have to kind of look at it that way, where it's like there's a reactionary force that kind of led to deconstruction due to there being some perceived issues with the traditional form. And then as you deconstruct it, you get further and further away with all these like splintered deconstructions. And that's what all these Protestant evangelical kind of churches are.
Yeah, it's like there's historical epochs, and there's people whose role it is to just kind of like bust the windows out.
Yeah.
And like Lenin was one of those people. Trump is
Yeah.
one of those people.
Hey, God bless.
Um,
Martin
Martin
Luther.
Martin Luther, right? Pope Francis. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Man, what a
And,
cast of people, dude. Put that on the Mount Rushmore.
I know, I know. Honestly, to be, I don't necessarily. I might be setting a trap for myself because I don't want to necessarily talk a ton about this, but I'm like, I'm like contrarianizing myself into a corner of like actually like being like like pro papist, like super pro papist at this point, because
Mm.
I've just like been seeing enough posts online now of people being like,
You were flip flopping
over.
around the Olympics, though, because you had this take a few
I
months ago,
know,
and then the Olympics came up, and you're like, "All right, what is Francis doing?"
I know. Well, dude, I don't know, but this is okay. Here we go. Right, I was flip flopping, but one thing remains true. Right, and this is really easy to be a cop out. Right, but the church plays the long game.
Yeah,
Right, we're running on 2,000 fucking years for a timeline. Right. Okay, the Pope comes out. Okay, first of all, they did make a statement on it. They released a statement. He didn't say anything in a speech or anything, but they released a statement on it
What'd it
eventually.
say?
Right? It was just like, it's fucking sad they're doing this, right? Like, we
Yeah.
renounce this. This is gross,
He's like,
right?
what the fuck is this about? Come on, guys.
Yeah. But the big speech, the big public speech he did in the wake of it, didn't touch on it at all. What it did touch on was international arms dealing and like
Oh
supporting
yeah,
the
you were talking
wars that
about
were
that.
going on,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay, that's actually kind of based,
Right, yeah. Speaking to
because
the
it's like,
actual mechanisms that drive a lot of the things, like it's more material.
well, yeah, and straight up just being like all of those people that like think that like fat androgynous fucking Jesus with a pagan crown on is cool are also the same people that are like, we need to like just crucify Ruskies, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And for the Pope to just be like, I'm just gonna kind of like laterally move around this. He's like anti culture war pilled a little bit,
mm-hmm.
right? And just be like, actually, warmongering needs to end,
Yeah.
right? Um,
That's
it's not
nice.
bad, right? It is, and
It's
well,
a
and also,
level take. It's something that you
what
can't really deny. Like there's no that's
well, and when
part of
you
the
think
long
about it
game thing.
exactly, when you think about it critically, it's like this is kind of how it has to be for this
Right.
position. And and anyways, really the main point, I saw some, this is just an example of a wider trend, right? You see, go on Twitter, you see this post, oh my gosh, Pope Francis says, asylum seekers, it's a sin to not take them into your borders. Asylum seekers, it's like refugees, yada yada, right? Oh my gosh, I can't believe it, dude. He's a fucking puppet of the globalists, dude. Fucking demographic change, fucking open borders, motherfucker. Oh my god, I can't believe this. And then you wait a couple days. Oh, well, actually, it kind of turns out people actually kind of like twisted his words a little bit
Yeah.
around, because this motherfucker's like speaking fucking Italian or some
Yeah.
shit.
And he's from a
Uh,
Spanish speaking country originally, so he's got like a kind of a strange like affect on it anyways.
exactly. This motherfucker's like speaking Spanish or Italian or some shit like that. And actually we like cut out a lot of the context, and actually here's a clip of him like in 60 minutes being like, yeah, I mean, like, you need to turn some of these people away, like, there's obviously like scenarios where you can't just take everybody in. That's not realistic,
Yeah.
right? Like he's literally just basically talking about like, we need to basically just do things for like mothers with like young
Yeah.
children that like had their houses blown up in a war zone. And it's like, I don't, that doesn't really make you
No.
like Klaus Schwab, you know what I mean? But again,
But he does
what's
hang out with
happening,
Klaus Schwab, so I mean him
that's
and the World
that's
Economic Forum,
he
Pope
did host
Francis.
them that time. He
Yeah,
did
God
host
bless.
them that time,
But here's the
right?
thing, it's like, do you want a pope that's saying, "Hey, close the borders"? You know what I mean? That's crazy. I would rather a pope that's like, yeah, like open the borders, let people seeking asylum in, even if I don't want that politically for my country. You don't want a pope, the head of like a of your religious institution, to be like fire and brimstone about like political bland borders. That's like that's not his fucking that's not his thing. That's not his bag. I don't want
I
him
think
to be doing that.
I think that there's a middle ground where like I don't want a pope that's based by design, right? But like I think the real like dialectic there, like the real synthesis would be like, you know, would basically be like, we need to like care for people that are vulnerable, and we need to balance that with the fact that like there still exists such a thing as like a people, and that's beautiful, right? Like it's when I go and I see bishops and clergy members in Africa and in Nigeria, and they look like Nigerians, like that's beautiful. And I go and I see the archdiocese in, the
Yeah,
eastern
but
United
we're
States,
past that
like,
here anyways. There's no look of an American here and from like that's not I mean, I get what you're saying and I like it, but if you were to say that about America, there's no I
I
don't
think
want my
people over.
Pope getting racial like that, dude. That's
I
I
think
think
I
it's
think
good
like
to say that people should have their own localities and that like self-determinism and that culture should remain strong and stuff. But
mhm.
that should be the truth for like Latin American countries, China, Africa, these places that you're naming where there is a singular nationality and like we were never that. Like we're not
Well, yeah, but what about
we're
England?
fucked here. Oh, England, sure. Okay, yeah. Oh, I see. You mean like as far as their
What
crisis
about?
and
I
stuff
mean,
over there?
yeah, I mean everything we're talking about with
You the
like
Europe and
Europe
everything.
is a huge example of it, right? I mean, what's going on in England right now, right, with all the riots? I mean, I don't even know if that's happening anymore. I don't pay attention to those lying
I mean,
cocksuckers.
I would
But
like a level take that's just like, and I think this is something you could kind of expect as being what's the mechanism behind his thinking. He's a Latin American. He comes from Latin America. He that strain of like Catholicism and like Christianity is a little bit more tied to social change, like very
yes,
very really like closely tied to that in like a more day to day impactful way than it is like in the West or like in North America and Europe a lot of the time now. And so I think that it comes from like a there's like a level of tie to the people and a level of like social justice kind of thing that's baked in already to like his understanding of the gospel and his lived experience in South America like doing that. And then so he's
mhm,
coming to over here and it's like yeah, he's looking at the destabilization that's happened via the regime change and stuff in South America, and there's like, and then all the stuff that's happened from that, and it's like, yeah, there's a responsibility on behalf of people that have caused this to like at least somehow right this wrong. But I think the line that you walk there is that saying the same thing is like I'm anti weapons manufacturers and stuff. It's like we should end regime change. We should restabilize these nations so that people can like feel safe and live in them. We can like that, and of course, I imagine that's what he would think and believe. And I think that
yeah,
it's like I would prefer a pope that's like that's kind of the implied, implicit understanding rather than like getting like he. There's just some things that they don't need to be. I don't know. I don't
I,
think he needs
I
to be
agree.
getting tied up on like border policy. I don't.
Well, that's I think like it's a matter of like tastefulness a little bit, like in a way, or at least it's like that's kind of like a dumb guy way of putting it, at least, which is it's just the like politics are transitory and like cheap and
Mhm.
flash in the pan, and like the faith is like without end.
Yeah, eternal.
And so like what we're huge, the faith is the church, and the faith is huge, and like the issues of the day are like ants, right? And if they really come up against these like transcendent truths, right, then yeah, then we comment on it, right? So basic stuff, abortions, killing a baby,
Right.
that's there's no real historic context that changes that, right? I agree. I think that your like skepticism of that point about like ethnos and stuff is like a fairly made one, but there's got to be something, right? There's got to be something in that captures that in some kind of way, because a couple points here. First of all, the Bible, like largely, especially the Old Testament, is like about like a people,
Oh yeah, I
right?
mean that's the whole Jewish
And
thing. But then also a lot of what
well,
Jesus was doing was undoing a lot of that like emphasis on that.
well, right, he kind of almost reforms
Right.
those, right? But and I get that, but just this idea of I think about the tradition in the church of like aesthetics, right? A basilica in Spain looks like a Spanish basilica.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And like I don't think that it's I know that I'm kind of like pivoting a little bit from like the biological aspect, because this is like an easier front to defend, but just like we want like we want basilicas that look like basilicas. We don't want this like gray goo
Yeah.
global culture where like everything looks like fucking Panera bread.
Right.
And I will say, as a quick side note, right, you conceded that, England is a different situation than the United States. I think that the diversity situation in the United States is like really overstated, right? I've been thinking about this lately. And I think it's basically like I think there's like three and a half distinct dominant like historical ethnicities in the United States. That's not saying that there's only three and a half ethnicities in the United States that are dominant now, but like that formed our history and our culture, and that basically have like some kind of claim as like legacy America. And that is, right, and they're obviously not equal demographically or influence, but it goes, you know, Protestant Europeans, blacks, Native Americans,
Yeah.
and then the three and a half, the half is Catholic Europeans, right? The East Coast, right? A lot of Catholic shit, right? Now, but really, it's white Europeans, right? White Western Europeans, blacks descended from slaves, and Native Americans. Now, I obviously see the Native American influence a lot more because I'm like up in the Pacific Northwest. We have a lot of that influence up here. But like that's really it, right? Like you don't see any Vietnamese influence on our culture, at least
You
architecturally.
see Latin
Uh,
though, or you see like a
yeah,
Spanish Latin American
well,
influence.
well, right, but Western Europe, right, and I would count that in the Catholic thing, right? Like the whole mission project across the West Coast in California, Spaniards, right? So,
But like the thing with these other cultures is, and I'm not trying to get too deep into the weeds here with this, but this is like
oh, you're good.
my thought process behind it, is that theirs is a more, I would feel that way if it was like, yeah, Native Americans are like, my thing is this, all right, God poured himself out into creation, and then like through the varied forms, diverse forms of creation, it gives glory to God and expresses God and expresses the great mystery through the varied forms of life around us, and the various forms of material reality that populate our day-to-day lives, right? And that's how we like interact with God, and that's how like God interacts with himself and expresses like the glory of God and all the mystery of all that is. And so, yes, you want to, I think that the line you could walk is to say, we want to encourage the diversity of forms that's present here and preserve it. And through that, we want to see strong cultures and strong, like, nationalities and people that feel like they have a strong tie to their native ground and their native people and their native country and that they belong to things. But a lot of that can lead quickly into some tribalistic thinking that's kind of like puts you like a rung below evolutionarily as far as like a psychological evolution standpoint. Like I think you need to have a level of that, but you don't want to get caught up in it too much, and so you have to be careful as like a church or whatever promoting that kind of that, how you promote that and what level you do. And then I think you
Yep.
want to say, yes, we want to proliferate these natural forms. We don't want it all to come sliding together into this one beige, one goo where everyone's cultural products are the same and it's all flat and everyone looks the same and there's no varied forms. Of course, that's like a moving away from the duplicity of beauty that's all around us, or multiplicity of beauty that's all around us. We want to preserve that, and through that, you want to make sure people feel like they have opportunity in their native places and that they can have a claim to their native homelands, etc. I feel like that's important. And like in England and Europe, you have that. In America, it's like we as a people don't have as much of a formed identity that's tied to the physical location, that we're like a very new kind of thing. It's almost like if all the Roman Empire was like in one place instead of like they had holdings or colonial stuff all over. It's like you have it's not like we were just kind of like grew up here over the course of millions of years and then like formed these cultures and relations and ethnicities amongst each other here, and it's tied into this region, and that would be like the native people. And so like I don't think that like I don't think there's really a claim here. It's like this should be a certain way. It's like we kind of threw that out with the fucking bathwater when we first created this like smorgasbord of like we're just no one ethnically is tied to here that is here really, except for like, yeah, you now were born here, your family moved here generations ago. It's not as deep of like a visceral tie to the, and I'm not saying that means it's like fuck it whatever, just like let demographics collapse and everything here, but I think that means it's a way trickier situation than somewhere like anywhere in Europe.
I agree with that. I agree with that. It is more nuanced. It is more nuanced. I do just think like I think that that aspect is overstated a little bit, right? Because we still need to keep it in context of just being like, yeah, it's like a little bit trickier. That doesn't necessarily mean that like totally justifies just like importing a billion Somalis and
Oh,
just
of
like
course
making your
not.
town look completely different
Right, and
just
I'm not
because like
for
a
that.
couple hundred, yeah, like just because like a couple hundred years ago like an Italian family moved in, you know
Right.
what I mean, like
Yeah, yeah.
so it's very different. And England isn't, and I'm not saying you're saying that, it's just the like it's just like the logic of the argument can kind of set us up for that. And I think one of the interesting things, I mean, England is a really great example of this because you see, God, I just saw like a post the other day. It was like, okay, everybody's, normies are mad at the nationalists, right? Normies are mad at the nationalists. They don't like the nationalists because they're scaring the hose and they're a little too extreme, right? And so this little village, they rejected a partnership with nationalist protesters and kicked them out of their town to to protest importing a bunch of Somalis and refugees into their village. Okay, a village that's been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. Population of 200 Brits.
Oh, this
Okay,
village is
well,
fucked.
yeah, a month later they got 400 overnight. 400
Holy
refugees
hell.
sent in, and so then they show up and they're like, "Hey, like, what's going on? What's up? Please just show up, start cracking them with batons, right?" Okay, well, maybe you should have fucking allied with the people that were trying to fucking say something, right? It's crazy. It's crazy, and that's like there's there is some way of articulating that that is wrong
Yeah. I think the way you
in
articulate
the
it is
Bosnian
just
Church.
it's like we gotta figure out a way to end the endless wars and regime change and like make it so people can live in the fucking places that they're from. Like I
That's
think
but that's
that's
but that's but
I
the
know it's a
problem with that,
hard task or whatever, but like
well,
that's the
exactly, and
only
that's
thing that'll stop it. I mean, we can close the borders too, but people are just going to keep showing up because the problem that's causing the immigration in the first place isn't solved. And a lot of it
yeah, but
also is the way
I
that we've pushed
yeah.
our like global hegemony everywhere and created this ideal of America that's in everyone's like in everyone's
But this is
minds.
this is the leftist kicking the can position that's always used to not do anything, which is the like, hey, we have this huge problem right now, right? And like I mean, what's a good? I have this huge problem that's going on right now, right? There's a homeless guy outside of my home with a knife, screaming that he's going to rape and stab me to death if I exit my house, right?
Yeah, but
I
put
need
him
help
in
dealing
jail.
with this.
Don't blame the system. Yeah, I get that point. But like you can
Exactly,
do that
exactly.
with the immigrants too. It's like, yeah, let this dude in. This dude obviously the fuck not. This dude's nuts or like it's gonna be a problem and it's not productive member of
Right,
society.
and so you need to have the short-term solution partnered in tandem with the long-term
Yeah.
solution, right? Let's deal with the foreign policy arrangement that makes this show up at our doorstep 10 years later, and let's deal with it on our doorstep right now.
But you're not getting
And
anyone that's tying the two ends together like that. Like it's not the people that
right.
are like wanting closed borders aren't talking about that. And the people who are wanting to or stop destabilization in other countries want open borders. So like I get like I'm trying to walk the line between the two and articulate the fact that like there is a systemic issue that's causing this influx, but there's things that we can do as far as individual tactics, but like the broad strategy that needs to be spoken to. And then I would imagine someone that's a large leader of like like the Pope or something should speak to strategy rather than individual tactics. And so it would be like the large strategy is we need to figure out a way to end destabilization, at least to some extent, cut off these routes that are causing like endless migration. And like that needs to be in tandem with the fact that like, yeah, we're not letting everyone in over here. So maybe that also gets people to stop coming this way. And so like, yeah, there needs to be an approach that can hold the both of those two things together and bring a synthesis about. But like I think that you have to be able to have that conversation. And I think that that's what the thing is that people just talk right by each other. It's like, no, we want to close borders, or no, we want open borders, or no, it's all about destabilization, or no, it's about the demographic change. And it's like, well, it's about all of that actually. And like we need to address it I would like to close the borders down and clamp it down for right now and figure out what the fuck is going on. And then also, like, that strong border might would send some sort of shockwave that would stop some of these, like, routes for migration that are just kind of endlessly profitable for all these fucking cartels. And we're creating
Right.
these systems that are like incentivizing the migration, and but we're also creating destabilization to make it happen. And it's like, yeah, we should try to stop that. That's going to be a whole thing to untie. So while that's like going on, we try to like handle foreign policy. Then yeah, we should address the border situation by like probably not letting in all these refugees. And it sucks and it's like sad or whatever, but that's kind of what it is. But then some people you kind of can let in, and then some people no, and it's like maybe kick out some of these other fucking immigrants that are here on visas that don't, like, they're not asylum seekers. Maybe send some of them out and then get the asylum seekers on their visas and put them through vocational training. It's like there's things that we can maybe do,
Right.
but like I don't know. I think it needs to be talked about in tandem.
Yeah, well, 100%. And the issue is that, and this is, I mean, this is kind of like foundational to politics. I don't really know that there's like necessarily like ultimately a solution to this, but it's like the issues, the positions, um, aren't actually they aren't it's not just simply a position and a solution to a problem. It is a calling card associated with a larger faction with
Yeah,
its own interests, right? Because that's how it works, right? Like the car needs an engine in it to propel it forward, right?
yeah,
And the engine needs gas, right? And so like and so it's not just it's again it's that idea of that kind of like liberal way of looking at politics, which is like this is a battle of like abstract ideas and we're gonna like let the best one win, versus like no, like politics is actually like a materially existing thing with like organizations that have like treasuries and like strategies and like hire people and have payroll and things like that. And like that latter view of it is where it gets a lot more complicated, right? Like what actually is like the input into that machine, into that matrix that makes these interests align to where you can go like, oh, okay, well, the left position and the right position can be done in tandem, yada yada yada. It just doesn't. It's kind of incompatible a little bit. And obviously that's where like I kind of come down on the like, yeah, like I think like having a kind of like a centralized authority that can kind of just overrule is a good one.
yeah. But
Which on that note, oh, go ahead.
if you can establish this, like, this is, I agree with that, but I think it's like if we're going to go that route, I want to make sure we can try to like shoehorn in the proper ideas for that centralized authority to focus on. And so that's like, for me it's like,
Oh, 100%.
okay, if we
Yeah.
have a centralized authority that's going to be able to kind of stop on this, I want to try to put a bug in the ear of that person as much as I can through talking about this in a broader way, to say like, okay, if you're really focused about the immigration issue and you're going to be like a strong leader, how about you like get a handle on some of these fucking national corporations or these multinational corporations and like some of their hiring practices with these illegals, and like a lot of things that they're doing like in order to mine fucking lithium down in these countries that's destabilizing. It's like you can do the two of those things. Like if you're going to be a strong leader that can say fuck the system to an extent, I'm going to build a wall, I'm going to do that, you can also lean on the corporations to do some things that's going to stop the other side of things. It's not necessarily the left position and the right position. Like I think that's, I don't think that there is incongruent as it's made out to be.
Oh, 100%. I think at a certain point you kind of like you can kind of I think that left and right will always make sense as a way of mapping things in some way, but like there is also a certain level of play where you kind of go beyond that perfectly mapping you on to the chart. I think that this feels like a good segue into a funny thing in the news right now that is relevant, which is the Trump IVF thing, right? So I don't know if you saw much about that, but
No, I
but
googled
basically
it when
like
you mentioned it, but I haven't. I saw he wants to make it covered by health insurance.
yeah, so I don't yeah, exactly. So I don't Okay, all right. I'm gonna intro this just really fast by saying I don't know like a ton about IVF. I literally just like recently had a conversation with my wife about it,
Hmm.
where she like basically explained why she doesn't like it, and it made a lot of sense to me about why it's like it's not good as far as like Catholic social teaching goes, right?
Yeah, and it can't be good for
Um,
the child. I mean, yeah, like we were
yeah.
talking a lot about the birth
Wait, it
process.
can or can't? You
Can't
said,
it can't? I'm saying, like we were
yeah,
talking a lot about the birth process, and how like doing the home and holistic birth has been like way less stressful on you guys and everything. And then we talked a bit about the baby, like not having to ride in the car and not having to see like the bright lights. And but I think that the approach that you guys are taking with a natural birth and everything is going to be equally, if not more, beneficial for the baby's experience of birth. And I think that we don't put enough weight on the birth experience in the formation of the child's life and like their psyche and their consciousness and them as an individual. I think that like the birth experience has a lot to do with it. And I think that like the kind of secular liberal worldview that we have is like, all right, when you like come out of the womb, boom, like now you're a person. And I think that the birth experience involves like
same.
everything up through conception. Like I don't think it's just like, and I think that's obviously probably, in line with the Catholic take is that like, you're conceived, you're a living thing at the moment of conception. And you're like an individual with like, a life that's laid out before you. And so IVF fundamentally is in vitro fertilization. And so they take sperm and they take egg and they take them in a lab dish and they combine them. They fertilize the egg to make an embryo. And once there's a successful embryo, they'll take that embryo and they'll implant it within the uterus, so that it can grow inside the woman. So maybe they have problems conceiving or the sperm is not doesn't have enough motility or whatever. But the thing
Yep.
is that this isn't like it doesn't just happen like that day. It's not like, here, come in this jar. We're going to extract your egg. We're going to go into this next room, put them together, and give you a shot, and then you're good to go. It's like, this is like a process that takes months, sometimes years. And what they do is they freeze the embryos. And so you'll have like your sperm and your eggs sent off. Like, people talk about freezing sperm, they talk about freezing eggs all the time. But I don't know that people are as familiar with the fact that they freeze embryos. And so, like, they'll combine the two, they'll fertilize the egg, they'll make the embryo, and then they'll freeze them. They'll do it multiple times. They'll sometimes because they want to make sure they have most of the time when people are doing
Yep.
IVF, they're doing it again. It's not something that always is successful the first time, or they've had a past history of other fertility treatments that didn't work. So it's like they're gonna make extras, and so they freeze embryos, and then you go one day when the time's right, and then they'll thaw the embryo and put it into you, and then hopefully it takes or whatever. So this like living your child was conceived and then made into an embryo. Like it had all the things needed for it to be life, and it was life. It is now a thing, a person, a living entity. And then you're just freezing it, and you're just like putting it in a fridge for like in some fucking scientific laboratory and maybe some other state. A lot of times there's like in Colorado, there's like a lot of clinics out there that people will travel to get it done. Um, and they'll have their other steps done like in a local area and then send it off, and then they'll go and do the actual like um, implanting there. And so there's a lot of it's crazy to me. I mean, it's like you're creating an embryo outside of the womb, outside of natural circumstances, and then you're freezing it. And so you're having these things kind of just held hostages in these fucking holding chambers, frozen for who knows how long. And then,
This was
okay,
this was a this was a thing we were talking. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and then you decide, okay, now's the right time. We're gonna thaw out this fucking thing. It may have been in there for a year, 2 year. It could have been in there who knows how long. And that's like not a natural cycle for growth. So that is already kind of strange. And then it's like, I mean, I think there's very important intergetic connections that are made or energetic connections that are made like with mother and child and father and child, and like that comes from the sperm and from the egg and in the process of growing in the uterus and like forming in the person. And I think that when you do it outside of this in these very sterilized conditions, I think you lose a little bit of something. And then I think that like when you put it back in and you let it grow, it's like and I'm not saying anything about these people. Like IVF babies, I'm sure are fine. They can be fine. And I bet most of the time it's no, they'd never think a thing about it or would know anything about it. But I think there's something that's like profaning the sacred a little bit by doing that. And
Yep.
it's maybe insensitive to people that that's their only way to get pregnant. But also at a certain level, it's kind of like, then maybe you just can't get pregnant. And I hate that. I hate that, and it's sad. And we have a fertility crisis. So I understand more and more people can't get pregnant. But also, if you really want a kid that badly, and that's your only option is IVF, it's like you could consider adoption. And like, I'm not saying that you should, and I'm making it a moral thing or whatever, but it's like, I don't know, freezing a child or like an embryo and just having them in limbo and throwing some of them away if you decide you don't want to use them all or whatever, it's fucking crazy to me.
Well, so, yeah. So this is another crazy thing about it too. As a quick side note, to give people a little bit of credit, uh, uh, adoption in the United States is like
Expensive and long and
complete.
hard.
It's complete bullshit, right? It's
Yeah.
total fucking bullshit. It's like evil, right? But to
We
your
should have a
point,
way to incentivize and make that process easier. If we're talking about like, wanting to help people have families, it's like, let's address the issues and borders to fucking adoption first, maybe before we make insurance pay for IVF, but whatever.
totally. What was I gonna say though? I was gonna say one thing that I hadn't been aware of that my wife was telling me is a lot of these people will have these embryos implanted, but they'll have like a bunch of them implanted to see like which takes the best, right?
Yeah.
And apparently this is, I understand this is fairly common. And then like out of that bunch, they'll just have like the rest like basically functionally like aborted,
Aborted. Yeah.
and
It's
that's like
crazy.
insane.
It's
That's
crazy.
that's fucking insane, right? And then also like she was talking to me about like this lady had like an embryo frozen, and she's just been like, it was like really really good embryo, so she's been sitting on it for years and years and
Yeah.
years, and now she's like 48, right? And she's like, oh man, like I wonder if I should have that thought and go for it. And and this person's just like, the ship has sailed, like
Yeah.
you should just like donate it or something, is what the one lady said, which again is like psychotic.
Also crazy.
um
But I mean,
and
maybe it's
and
maybe
and
the ethically right thing to do, I guess, in this scenario.
and well, and it's just funny because I'm like talking to my wife, and she's like, yeah, I mean, like, I guess like that's like, I guess like it's weird, but like it's like, I guess there's like nothing wrong with that. It's just like sitting there. It's like not aware. And I was like, I mean, it's pretty obviously like an ensouled being that you've basically
Yeah.
like frozen like a lich in a fucking phylactery, dude.
Yeah, it's
Like
insane.
fucking release me. I have a soul, and you've frozen me in fucking carbonite
Yep.
in a lab drawer somewhere. Like that's one of the most insane things I can imagine. That's like a fucking Black Mirror episode,
Mhm.
being stuck in the fucking AI
Yeah.
egg,
It
right?
is
Like
science fiction for sure.
release me, dog. So yeah, no, I don't. I'm
It's
not.
almost like the people who want to upload their consciousness onto like have you heard of these kind of people?
Yes,
They'll like have their
yes.
brain cryogenically saved or whatever, or their body, and then they'll like try to upload it. They want to upload it into like an avatar or whatever. And it's the same kind of thing. It's like there's warehouses full of people that just have like, they're dead and they're cryogenically frozen, just waiting to have their brain uploaded onto some fucking thing. And it's like, that's, dude, let me rest. What the fuck are you doing? Like, that's the same thing. It's like you're creating this purgatory, like this material purgatory for, it's like, why are you doing that? Just let things happen as they're going to happen. And then with IVF specifically, because I worked, like I mentioned before, I worked in the fertility clinic. A lot of these broads that were coming through were on IVF, and it doesn't, I don't know how to say this, it's an overall net negative on quality of life for everyone involved almost every time. There are incredibly low success rates.
Mhm.
It is very expensive, which is, I imagine, is what Trump's whole thing is with wanting insurance to cover it. It's very expensive. It's cost prohibitive. So the families that are deciding to do this, I mean, some of them have a lot of money, and it's like, it's not that big of a deal. Some of them are like taking out loans to do it, or are second mortgaging their homes to do it, or either way, just making really difficult decisions to try to make it happen. And most of the time it doesn't work the first time. The success rates are staggeringly low, especially for how
Right.
expensive it is. Like, I pulled up some numbers here. 2019, under 35, which is your best age range, your best likelihood. Success rate for IVF, 32%. As you age, that number falls drastically. 35 to 37, 25% success rate for IVF procedures. 38 through 39, 19% success rates. Like, you're that's 1 in 5 chance of even working in the first place. So why are we going to do this like incredibly baroque procedure that's like seems arcane and brutal and like not humane in any capacity? We're doing this procedure. We're putting these people through extreme emotional stress because they want to make sure, like, because there's also things that you have to hit certain dates. You got to do, you have to make sure that you're like, getting your eggs out on these dates, and then you got to make sure you have good enough amount of eggs, and you got to make sure that you're doing these certain things for your uterus to be prepped for a fucking embryo to just be shoved in there. Because that's another thing. It's like you have to simulate the conditions of fertilization and like attaching to the uterus and that kind of thing, like that it's already going to be happening in the womb of someone who's naturally conceiving and giving birth. And so it's just this whole other thing, and it's like you're putting people through all of this. They're getting a lot of, they carry a lot of guilt too, because it's like, what if I didn't do the exercises right? What if I didn't have this done at the right time, or waited too long, or whatever? And you're doing all of this in order to have a possible under 1/3 chance at the very best possibility of it working. And so that means
Right.
you're going to do it again, because if you're in that invested and you're that deep, you're going to want to keep doing it until you're out of eggs. And that's what they do, or until you're out of embryos, viable embryos. And so people get on this fucking assembly line, and they're just going down and just getting more and more treatments and getting more into debt. And I've seen it breaks fucking relationships apart. It's like you would be 100% better off just trying not to have kids anymore most of the time. And sometimes it works for people and it's great, and it's like, I'm happy that it does, but it doesn't, most of the time it doesn't help, and it doesn't work. And if it does work, it's after a long, long road, and it puts people to their wits end, and it leads to a number of miscarriages most of the time, discarded embryos. uh, to me, I think it's like it's not right. And I want to say that empathetically, from like understanding that I'm not a woman, so I don't know like the biological drive to have a baby inside of me and stuff like that. But like, I am an adult person, and I'd like to have a child one day. So I understand the drive of like, I want a kid, and then I can only imagine how heartbreaking it would be to be like, I am not able to conceive. And so I understand what drives people to do this. And I'm not saying that it's necessarily morally wrong to, or maybe I think it is kind of morally wrong, but I understand what gets you there and the justification for it. But I just
It's
don't
almost
think
like
it's right.
it almost sounds a little bit like the argument you're making is a little bit kind of just like it's almost like uh the fertility equivalent of being like getting a nose job isn't going to make you happier if you're
Yeah.
kind of unhappy, if you're kind of like homely, right? Like
Yes.
if you're infertile, like just like raging against that by like
Mm-hmm.
fighting nature is kind of like a classic um is kind of like a classic oh my gosh, what's the fucking pushing the rock up the hill? Why am I so
Sisyphean.
stupid? Yeah, exactly. And it's fundamentally getting started on like on kind of an unenlightened, wrong-headed approach. And
Yeah.
and I respect the point you're making because it's for lack of a better word, it's kind of an ugly one, right? Like it's a
Yeah.
harsh fact, right? Where you're just saying like you like need to know when to give up,
Mm-hmm.
right? But like that's like true, right? Like you can't punch a hole in the concrete wall. You should
Mm-hmm.
stop punching it, right?
Yeah.
And like you should be able to know when the lesson is learned. It's very interesting. We know a couple that was trying for kids for many years, like a staggering number of years, and they didn't do IVF, but they did a similar, not as similar, but they did a particular treatment, and it was crazy. It was just crazy. This whole struggle they went through,
Mm-hmm.
right? And nothing worked. We're talking like 5-6 years.
Yeah,
Um, and
I've
then you
seen
know
it.
what? And then you know what happens? Uh, well, I'll spoil the end of the story. They're pregnant now, fucking, and but this is a good story.
Good.
Um, the wife just switched jobs to something that was much less stressful
Oh,
and physically demanding,
yeah,
and in like less than a year, gained like 20 pounds, in a good way,
yeah.
and then instantly got pregnant.
A lot of the times that's the thing. That's the holistic look and approach to it too. It's like a lot of times when you're going through these um, allopathic kind of Western fertility approaches, they're not looking at all these other factors. And so you're going into a fucking fertility doctor and you're walking into a hospital and you're getting these tests done and stuff, and they're looking at it from a very um, tunnel vision kind of thing. They're just looking at like, why doesn't your uterus work? It looks like mechanically this is what's going on. It's kind of like the chemical imbalance thing with fucking mental illness. It's a very mechanical looking at the body and not taking into effect or into account the entire like holistic picture of life that surrounds the body. And
Right.
that's like with the acupuncture clinic, they've people that go to acupuncture for fertility treatment while they're doing fertility treatments have like a incredibly higher success rate with all of them. And I think most of it is not, I mean, I think there's obviously energy and stuff in the acupuncture, but I think a lot of it is just that they have a holistic way of looking at it. And so your traditional Chinese medicine doctor or acupuncturist is going to suggest lifestyle changes, posture changes, perhaps job changes, dietary differences, all sorts of different breathing exercises, all sorts of things that will like change the outcome without doing anything that has anything to do with your uterus or with your fallopian tubes or your ovaries or whatever the issue is. And they give you a better um, just a more healthful approach to the whole childbirth thing in the first place. And I think that a lot of these things could be solved that way, like you're talking about. Like you try all these different things, so IUI, IVF, all this different stuff, and then it's not working. And then you just go and you have a lifestyle change. You get healthier one way or another, less stress, eating better stuff, no more seed oils, no more receipts, whatever it is, and then all of a sudden you can get pregnant. And it's like, didn't think about how you feel after that. You're like, I wasted all this fucking time and money on IVF. There is such a racket. I mean, we all know the medical system is a racket already, but the fertility thing is almost even more so, because it's kind of new. It's kind of a new science that's developed in the past couple decades, and it's very experimental, and there's low success rates in the first place, and so there's no benchmark for success. So like you can just keep being like, well, just keep throwing money at it and it might work. And so people get caught on that so much. And like I can't even express the amount of people coming in that are like on IVF. It's there's just deep pain and sadness and stress like in their eyes, and it's just like, I don't know. It never seemed worth it to me. There were times when like I would see women coming in, I see them over the course of a year and a half, and they're like on their second trial now or whatever of trying to go through it, and it's or their second cycle, and it's like some of them on their eighth, ninth, and it's like, just stop, please just stop for yourself.
Right.
And obviously I'm not in a position to say that because I was a fucking receptionist, but it's like, good God. But I'm the one dealing with it
I
because
went to
like,
this place, and just like the guy working at the counter just started screaming, "Just stop!" at me.
yeah, this dude is like way too base to be working there. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. And I don't think it's worth it for like a wellness point of view. And I don't think that like it's morally correct to do that with embryos.
Yeah, yeah. I.
But we didn't even talk about Trump, I guess, at all. So I didn't mean to sidetrack us. I just went
No,
off
it's
on fucking
no. This is
IVF.
no. It's great though, because that was an exhaustive indictment of IVF, and that was the part that I was going to struggle with the most. Um, really, the main thing with Trump is just I think it's kind of funny strategically.
Mm-hmm.
because um, I can't tell if I'm just like a baby brain and I just have like a simplistic view of the whole thing, or if I have an accurate read on this. But there's a few angles, and I'm just going to belt them out all really fast, right? One, this feels like 2016 Trump, where he's saying shit that's a lot more like that's like a lot closer to like that's bucking dogma of uh, of conservative economic doctrine by just being like, we're just gonna
Yeah.
make it paid for by insurance, and like fucking Milton Friedman cocksuckers will just be like,
Yeah.
what? No, and he gets to back liberals into a corner
Mm-hmm.
by like having them expose the fact that they're like economic conservative neolibs.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is
And like
nice. I do like
that
that.
that rocks, and like that's cool. um I think it's also fun. I think it's also funny because he's basically taking a positivist approach to fertility,
Yeah.
to counter the negation that liberals have to defend by
Mm-hmm.
making the entire campaign about abortion, right? So
Right.
instead of negating the child, because that's been part of the, he's taking away their ability to say like we're like in favor of family planning, right?
Right.
So and they've been saying like we're in favor of IVF. They want to get rid of that, right? So first of all, it's another check in the column of him just like for the billionth time saying that Project 2025 has nothing to do with him,
Yeah.
which is great because it doesn't.
Yeah.
This is him distancing himself from like the paleocon Christian nationalist
Yes.
gang, which I think is good.
Yeah.
I think that it is funny that again, yeah, they're like their negation defined approach to female reproductive health, I guess. I mean, I don't like referring to abortion that way, whereas he's the positivist
Mm-hmm.
approach to it, which I think is, that's just cheeky. There's something cheeky about
Yeah. I
that
like
that
that a lot.
I appreciate. Again, it's another check in the column of be normal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now
Mm-hmm.
again, like I don't, as a Catholic, right? I don't really, I shouldn't even say as a Catholic. Like I'm a Catholic person. As a person, like I don't, yeah, I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't like abortion.
Bigger fish to fry though, kind of with this one. You know, I mean,
Well,
it's like,
that's the whole take with all of this stuff. Basically, is right wingers basically getting mad at the anti-abortion activists and just being like, you're literally ruining this for everyone, and they're kind of correct
yeah,
on that. I mean, if Roe v. Wade hadn't been overturned and like the pro-life people hadn't gotten their way, like the Democrats wouldn't have just been gifted with a bow on it their
yeah,
entire platform for this year. So, anyways, I think it's just funny from a strategic standpoint. So, like I said, the return to normalcy, distancing from the schizo Christians, which I think is good
yeah.
personally.
Maybe not for
As
my boutique interest. It's not good for me personally, but I think it's
But that's
the
not
right
what politics.
political move. Right, of course. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. I think that just this kind of perfect foil counter that he's doing
Smart.
with fertility is smart and funny strategically in a very Trump way.
Mm-hmm.
I think the fact that he's like just a right winger that's coming out and literally just being like, yeah, no, like this is just going to be free and provided by insurance
Yeah.
now. Fuck you
It's
guys.
the
Is
patronage
like,
thing too. I mean, maybe not to like the Christian right or whatever, but it's patronage to like the working class base that he's kind of trying to court, middle class, working class kind of people that
yeah,
have family values.
yeah. And so it's interesting.
It's like direct
That's
payments, dude. It's based. I like it. I don't like that. Like I said, I don't like
I like it. I
IVF,
like it as a
obviously.
political strategy. I don't
Yeah.
like the thing itself that it is, but
But it's a good indicator. And I think it goes in tandem kind of with the fact that he's bringing on like RFK, Tulsi Gabbard. You bringing these more like kind of left leaning in a capacity, but like culturally kind of more on the right a little bit, but like interested in health. Like I think the big thing with RFK and his endorsement that happened, which we haven't talked about since it happened, since we haven't had a pod, but it's that like there's a lot of speculation about him being involved with health, like Department of Health or something along those lines, which I don't really know if that'll ever happen. But Trump keeps mentioning like in interviews about him and in speeches that he wants him to get a handle on health, and this there's a pivot towards health and like being now actually the party that's focused on the health of children and like actual health, day-to-day wellness and well-being, which I don't really know that was necessarily ever a strong thing on the right in any capacity for like a conservative politics in America, even though maybe that's everyone would like to see that. I don't think that was ever the, like Michelle Obama was the face of like health or whatever with her fucking school lunches kind of program, which it was not actually healthy or whatever. But that's kind of like the shift that's happening, and I think that this kind of goes in tandem with that. He's like, listen, we're going to try to help free up your individual capability to make decisions about your health and in some capacity or another. I think this goes in line with that messaging.
Yeah, yeah, 100%, 100%. And so, I think, I think it, I think it's another. It's the whole like personal freedom
Yeah.
thing. Uh, uh, we want personal freedom as a goal unto itself, versus we want personal freedom for a specific vision of the future.
Yeah.
And I think this is kind of an example of the latter again.
Yeah.
Also, so I think that's funny. We're kind of getting. I think I feel like I have to imagine we're getting towards the end here, so I kind of want to do at least lightning round talk about Walz.
Oh God, fuck, dude. Yeah, we didn't talk about him at all. Yeah.
There's a couple things. I think that we're now. I don't know. You're not on Twitter still, but
yeah. What's even going on?
Like nothing. I've kind of checked out recently because, well, the thing is like the whole election cycle peaked already. Pretty quickly.
Oh yeah. Assassination attempt, fucking coup in the Democratic Party. Yeah.
Yeah, and then that was it, and it was just boring.
Then it was like Megan Thee Stallion shaking ass in Atlanta with next to Kamala.
Yeah, who cares? Like,
yeah, right. That's like the
there was that little annoying phase, and it was over because it didn't have a very long half life of everything being weird.
Yeah,
right. That was the Kamala "I'm a dumb bitch" campaign strategy. Weird. They're so weird. Tim Walz. The flip side of that was like I think of the chick that runs Libs of TikTok to basically just be like the mirror, like the mirror version of horrible lib women, where she just like kind of like deploys the same horrible strategies and the same like petty vapid nature. You know who I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
And so her and her whole ilk, right? We're posting just tons of videos of like, look at Tim Walz shake his wife's hand on stage. What a weirdo. Look at Tim Walz just being weird on stage. And it's just like him just like giving a speech. Just talking.
Yeah.
And then there was, I don't know if you saw this, but Tim Walz has an autistic son.
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of different takes about that. Fucking, I woke up one morning and I see some lib I know just posting about like, I got this video on a repeat watching this son. It's such a nice thing to see, to have a man have that much pride in his father. And then I scroll a little bit more, I see someone being like, "Fuck this kid."
like, yeah, people are like, first of all, Tim Walz fucking raped his son. That's why he's acting that way. And
Jesus
his son's
Christ,
fucking a fat, ugly retard. And like, and it's like funny, because there's like a whole genre of poster online, like I think like Howling Mutant, where it's just like your bit is just being a little mutant, right? Just like being a nasty little. You're just like being a nasty little man, right? And that's like the whole bit. And like I love that, right?
Dude,
and that's
shout out Howling Mutant. God, I hope he's still out there.
Dude, he's thriving.
Hell yeah.
So that's good, and like that's like that kind of person's path, right? I like don't really want to like make my soul ugly.
No, I'm not doing that.
And so yeah, it's like weird. Like to be fair, really fast, just like making fun of his kid for being a fat, ugly retard is funnier in like just
it's hilarious, yeah.
And being evil, I'm just reveling in being evil, and that's funny.
Or it's like funny that people will do that. Like I don't think that's funny, but I think it's funny that someone will say that. Like I think that's like so absurd. I'm like, dude.
No, just the genre, and maybe they think about it differently. They think we're idiots for thinking this, but it's like the joke in my mind is that you're just like a little fucking goblin man.
Yeah,
right. Like you're just a nasty little ugly man with a small soul, just making fun of an ugly retard because he's an ugly retard. Anyways, point is, that's like less annoying to me than like Tim Walz is weird. But point is it's just dude, like historic chokes of all time. Conservatives are just like doing laps around the libs, right? Just absolutely shitting upon them. And they're fucking riding high on this fucking most baller assassination attempt ever.
Yeah.
And then for some reason, they're just effectively countered by just some like 25-year-old intern being like, first of all, our candidate is brat, and second,
Yeah.
you're
Jesus Christ.
you're weird. And I think I said this to you last time. Maybe I said this on my solo recording, which by the way, I want to do more of that, and maybe I
Yeah.
will do that like as a way of having a lifeline while I'm taking care of the baby when the baby comes. But
Yeah,
like
we got to figure out logistics for that, but we can do that off air.
for sure. But just this idea of like, bro, if you're successfully like just countered and start crumbling when like some woman just trots out the low effort, you're weird offensive, like that, what that tells me is that you just like haven't tried talking to a woman before.
Yeah.
Like you've like never tried and failed at asking a girl out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or like you've never tried and failed to ask a girl out who's a fucking bitch,
Yeah.
right? Like
Bingo. Yeah. Yeah.
you just like you are severely lacking in life
You
experience,
can play
right?
that game, but you can kind of make it fun a little bit.
Well, it's just like, bro, you got soft hands. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's, you don't know how to this is like page one shit.
Yeah.
You don't know how to deal with a woman just being like cynically calling you weird as an insult. Like this is, grow the fuck up, dude. You need to get out there and live a little bit more because like you got to catch up, dude. Like your bona fides for being a fucking man are lacking.
We're
Is what
talking
I'm
about
saying.
fucking JD Vance though, dude. So I mean, I don't
Okay,
know.
here's the thing. Here's the fucking thing. I like get that Jay. I'm gonna push back on that a little bit, right? I get it. He's like a little bit stiff, right?
He's twerpy.
He's that's the holy shit. I mean, you hit the nail on the head, right? That's it, right? He's a little twerpy. Um, at the same time, he's just a dude.
Yeah.
He's just a dude who works in fucking politics.
Yeah.
He's a dude that works in fucking politics. Okay, like this guy is probably a lot better at like basic managing keeping a fucking tight schedule and networking than he is at like making media appearances. I guess
Definitely.
I don't fucking know. I don't really give a fuck. You know what I
But
mean?
that's why he's fumbling the bag here though. Like that's like the
I don't even think
campaign is
no, but that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying is like, I don't think he's actually fumbling the bag. I don't think that you're actually being weird if some slut calls you a weirdo for like asking her out on a date. I think that you're being weird if you have like such a glass jaw that you actually feel the need to like react to it and then let her win.
That's what I'm
right?
saying.
Like
Yeah.
he's just like being fucking normal. Like this is it's a similar thing. It was a similar thing to the right wingers like being like, "Hey, you fat fucking ugly retard." The libs started kind of like scraping the bottom of the barrel, and they would like see like pictures of like him from like college, like JD Vance, of him, or just like in high school. There was a picture of him in high school standing next to all these girls that were like posing in like the boys' bathroom pretending to pee at the urinal, right? And he's just like this fat acne faced kid wearing like a band t-shirt or something. Like he looks like someone who like plays Counter-Strike and like plays Magic the Gathering, right? And like listens to fucking A Perfect Circle. And like and it's like in reality, this is just like a cute little like high school gag that probably went in the yearbook.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's just like this fat dorky kid who like the girls are comfortable enough around to like go and do this gag picture in the boys' bathroom.
It's kind of likable.
It's like kind of cute and more endearing than anything. And everyone's like, look at how fucking weird he is. Look at it. And it's like just don't acknowledge that. Literally just ignore that.
Right.
Because it's only weird if you allow them to frame it that way.
I think he's kind of they're doing a little bit to try to acknowledge it and counter it. Like I think that like I don't know. My thing is not that he's weird, but I think that he's just kind of a bitch. And I think that like I think that that's indicative of the way that this campaign is handling the Tim Walz. Like that's why Tim Walz is like basically showing him up in a way. Like that's why That's why there was, and I think a lot of it is manufactured. I think there's a manufactured boost in the polls, of course, and a lot of that could be worth a grain of salt. But I do think there's a level of like people are catching on to the Tim Walz and Kamala Harris thing in a way that I didn't really expect. And I think that there is some issues where like I just don't think they're handling. I think Tim Walz is able to show up the Trump campaign and stuff because of like what you're saying, but I don't think it's because it's like, oh, they're right, like JD Vance is weird. I just think they're like the campaign's being managed by people that are just kind of like kind of twerpy bitches. Like it's not, and they're
Exactly,
not
exactly.
countering correctly.
The Trump campaign is fucking boring, and like
Yeah.
I think that the live stream he did with Elon was one of the best moves they've made the entire time, because uh I mean they've just been fucking twerps. That's exactly the word. And the Musk interview, even though like I got bored and I stopped listening to it halfway through, but like it was just like an hour and a half of Trump just riffing,
Oh,
which
nice.
is what you do with the guy. That's what you do
Yeah.
with the guy. He's like exceptionally poor at reading off a teleprompter for a
Yeah.
speech. He's like actively bad at it. Have him just vibe on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like have him do that Trump thing where he's kind of just like complimenting the person he's talking to and talking about how great of a job they do,
Yeah.
and then just like kind of being catty about people he doesn't like, and like just vibing. You know what I mean? He's just I hate that word, but it's kind of what it is. He's just feeling himself, you
Yeah.
know?
It's just
That
jazz,
rock.
baby. It's just jazz
He's
up
just,
there.
no, exactly, dude. Like, let him get up there and just like fucking Charlie Mingus it a little
Yeah.
bit, right? And like, I want them to do like a. Remember when they did that Mitt documentary that was just like a documentary about the Mitt Romney campaign?
Yeah.
I want them to do that for Trump, but I want it to just be like a shot for shot recreation of the Mingus documentary,
Mm.
where like early in the movie he just like shoots a rifle inside his studio to just be like, look how cool and wacky I am.
Yeah.
And then the movie ends with him just like getting put in a cop car and arrested because he shot a gun inside a fucking apartment
Yeah.
building earlier in the movie. Like I just have him be doing some crazy shit. Anyways, point is, I'm trying to talk about Waltz here. This whole thing about just being like, Waltz is so weird, he's so creepy, is like a really fucking stupid
Yeah.
counter,
He's pretty
especially because
normal.
like, no, he's just an awful politician.
Yeah.
Okay, and the main thing is he set up the narc line
Yeah.
during COVID.
Yeah.
Okay, and he let fucking
Minneapolis
he
burned to the ground, dude. What the fuck are we
exactly.
talking about?
That's all it needs to be. That's all it needs to be. When you do the thing where you go like, "Oh, he's Tampon Tim. What a weird guy. He's so weird. Oh my gosh." It's like what you're doing is you're allowing your enemy to create and
Yes.
control the frame. Okay,
Yes.
you're a fucking idiot. You're a fucking idiot. They get to be the people that are doing schoolyard politics, talking about who's weird and who's not weird. We get to be the people that says, "Hey, remember like when like you were on house arrest for like 2 fucking years and like people's fucking houses got burned down
Yeah.
and how fucked up that was and how that ruined your fucking life." Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
this guy was like the poster child of that shit. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
fuck you,
And his
fuck
wife was
you.
just like reveling and smelling the carnage through the open window of their home. Like crazy shit
Exactly.
like that, dude.
That's creepy shit. That's creepy shit. And you know what you do? You don't say that it's. I mean, this is when like libs of TikTok at one point was like actually kind of effective because it was before this lady got doxxed. She like it was like a lot of pictures of like not really including a lot of commentary, right? It was
Mm-hmm.
just videos of being like, look at what these people are like.
Yeah.
That's it.
Make your
Posted
own
without comment.
conclusions. Yeah.
Exactly. And like that was so effective. And now it's like, then she starts doing the shit of being like, well, this is the school where this person works, and like this is the place where this
Right.
person works. And, like, fuck this person. This is their house. Yada yada, and just
Playing
all
by
of
the
this shit.
left's games.
Exactly. Which like again, like I get. It's a difficult balancing game where it's like, yeah, like we don't want to hobble ourselves, right? But at the same time, like you don't want to just turn yourself into a fucking demon person. And I mean, Lives of TikTok is a fucking clown. She's a joke,
Yeah.
right? And so yeah, I don't like Tim Walz. I think he's fucking creepy. We were like out at breakfast the other day, and my father-in-law is just like talking to my wife, and it's just like, "Hey, honey, did you see that clip of Tim Walz being funny with his daughter?" And we're just like sitting there, just like just repulsed that
Yeah.
like this is working on someone we know.
It's
But that's the
insane.
whole thing is he's just the like aw shucks G
Mm-hmm.
Willikers guy. Like I'm just kind of a fucking minstrel show of a white Midwestern guy, you know, and it's like you're shut the fuck up, dude. You're like
Yeah.
you're annoying. You're annoying. That said, he's a great speaker. He's a great speaker,
Yeah.
and that's the whole reason they picked him. So the whole reason they picked him, one, picking a governor is a great call.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, picking a governor is a great call because one, there's someone who's actively dealing with like capital P politics, running a political machine,
Yeah. In the executive
right?
branch.
As opposed to being like a lifestyle brand, like uh someone like AOC or someone that's like
God.
in federal
Yeah. Yeah.
politics, right? Like someone that actually is like a
Who's that one black broad from Georgia? Uh,
Stacey Abrams.
Stacey Abrams. Yeah. 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 She's that.
Blorgia.
Yeah.
So, well, yeah, born loser, dude. So, well, no, and I'm just so glad they didn't go with someone like her, right? So,
Yeah.
so he's a good choice there. The other thing is he comes across, and this is the thing that I don't like about these posts, right? It's libs of TikTok being like, look how weird he is, and it's just like a 3-minute clip that she's tricked me into watching,
Yeah.
where like
He
where
looks
I'm just
pretty
forced.
normal.
No, where I'm just like, this is just a guy talking.
Yeah.
Like, what?
You're
The fuck are you
defending
even
him now. You're like, wait a minute, this dude's not weird.
No, exactly. Like, fuck you for making me do this.
Yeah.
He's a good speaker. He comes across as somewhat charming,
Yeah.
right?
I think he's just
Which
a
is what he
retard.
needs. Well,
Like I think he's just like a good like I think he's like a good speaker or whatever. He's like a like I think he's just kind of like he's your classic like I don't think he's very ambitious in the way that like Kamala is. Like I think Kamala is like indicative of like a broad that's like or a type of politician that's kind of like fucked her way to the top and like made, you know, whatever kind of decisions she needed to do, hollowed herself out to be just fucking the face of whatever multinational corporation wants. And I think that he is less I don't think he doesn't seem to be quite as ambitious in that same capacity. Like he doesn't have like a lot of like holdings and shit like that. He's not like married to like Doug Imhoff. You know what I mean? He doesn't have like the same striver syndrome that's so apparent with Kamala. Um and I think that like I think he's kind of just like a putsy like I think he obviously lets the DNC do whatever they want, and he like is just a stand-in for like the party's concerns, and hence the COVID fucking lie and everything like that. But I think that like I think he's kind of just like just not I don't know like I don't think he's very effective, and I think that that makes him work if that makes sense. Like I think that he's kind of like I think that both of them are people that aren't very effective at doing their job, but I think they're different ends of the spectrum. I think like Kamala is someone who like bullshitted her way into a place, and like she doesn't know what she's doing there, and no one knows why she's there, but she's just there, and she's kind of like a vessel. And I think that he's kind of like just not very ambitious, but it's kind of like kind of doing the right things. Um, but I think because he doesn't seem like super ambitious or like it seems like he's more likable. Like I don't know that he's very effective at getting anything done politically, but I think that because of that, like that's the message that they're sending is like we're not even doing anything. Like we're not trying to move you. We're not trying to like get you worked up about political issues or anything. We're not trying to really do anything. Like he's like putsy kind of just dude. And he looks like he's kind of just a fat. They're trying to make him like he's like Midwestern kind of pudgy, like dad bod guy. And it's like
he
I
needs
think
the vice president fundamentally needs to be somebody who's going to get out of the way of the
yeah,
president,
and
right? And he's a good choice for that, right? The
caffeine.
big thing,
Sorry,
dude, you got fucking there's demands being made of you, dude. Um, the big thing is they needed someone who comes across as likable when he talks
yeah,
because she doesn't. She comes across as fucking drunk, and the fact I don't necessarily know if she is like a wino the way that like a lot of people are trying to say,
she
but
seems
the
like
fact
it.
that she kind of does. She comes across as like a kooky wine ant. Um, it the fact that she comes across that way at all is a fucking big problem.
Yeah,
And so they needed somebody that, you know, is relatively unintimidating, which he is, and who knows how to fucking talk in a way that makes people like him,
Yeah.
which she just is can't comprehend. So they did that.
He's like a putz in a
Again,
way that a likable uncle is a putz, whereas like JD Vance is like a twerp in a way that like you don't really want to be like around that guy.
yeah, he's a putz in the way that like all white men need to be,
Yeah, yeah.
to be like given a seat at the
To be
table.
successful, yeah.
But yeah, no. Anyways, that's that. I guess I don't know. I mean, I don't have a lot else to say. I mean, the main point is, and this is the point I'll always fucking make at the end of the day, which is just like we're not going to get the referendum, the election on COVID that we actually deserve. It's never going to happen, you know. Um, and so like the actual strategy against him is, hey, you like fucking were the fucking COVID narc line guy.
Yeah.
But like we're not going to get that because that implicates both parties. And so we're just going to get a lot of like, you're a fucking weird faggot, fuck you kind of
Yeah.
shit. That's just totally vapid and like whatever, you know. You're just gonna keep posting videos of him just like being an effective speaker and
Mm-hmm.
just like telling me that I should watch this and have the takeaway that he's weird and I'm not.
Yeah, and it's not
And
gonna work.
that's gonna be the whole thing. And you're probably yeah. Anyways,
Yeah,
it's frustrating.
the whole thing is like I've seen it kind of catch on in a way that I didn't expect for it to. And then like the way that they're just fully running on like absolutely nothing except for like, I mean, there's the women's reproductive health, I guess, but then it's like they're running on just pretty much just like Kamala's gonna be like it's like Obama. It's just like Mimba Obama. It's like, but there's no change. It's like instead of change, it's just like this is history. Like this is the historical moment. There's no like this historical moment's going to lead to change. It's just like, yeah, this is the thing. It's like black woman president, woohoo. And it's like they're running on that and then also running on just nothingness, like on like the be normal kind of like don't be weird. But in that, it's just like don't be of anything, have no real opinions, like and just having no substance at all. And then watching people just being like, I don't know. I think most of the libs' problem was just that Biden was old. And then now, as soon as you get Biden out of the picture, it's like Kamala's young. People are just like excited about it. And it's unbelievable. It's made me so much so, like, actually, really actually want to vote for Trump. It's like, it's in such a strong capacity. And then the RFK thing, too, kind of put me over the fence that direction as well.
Yeah, yeah, 100%, 100%. I think that I mean this is how it works, right? Is just they push you into the arms of the other person, and you never really get what you actually want. I'm like thoroughly uninspired by this whole election.
Yeah.
Um, I don't, which is nice because I get to just not focus on it, and I
Yeah.
just get to focus on like having a child. So that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
But
Children greater than elections.
oh, and I will say one thing. RFK wise, I thought so. His speech he gave when he like dropped out and endorsed Trump.
Yeah.
Which, for the record, anyone that's surprised by that is hilarious. Is just not on the ball. But
Yeah.
His line about like our future as a country relies on our ability to love our children more than we hate each other.
Yeah.
Fucking banger.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. That's his whole thing. He's like, we gotta protect these kids. He's like, I sat at home and had like soul searching, like, is this the right thing to do? I'm turning my back on the party of my fathers, blah blah. But then I was like, we gotta try to protect these kids in whichever way we can. Like that was his whole thing, and that's commendable. I think it's interesting. I think that like I don't know. I have my concerns about RFK, and so in that sense, I have my concerns about him getting involved with the Trump team. But then at the other flip side, I have a lot of things I like about RFK, and then I like that he's going to be bringing that into the forefront. I hopefully, in some
I like that
capacity.
I like that he's not the guy as a face of an entire campaign now.
Oh yeah,
Like
definitely.
I like him a lot. I like him a lot more as just a member of the team.
God, if he can get a
Um,
cabinet position, I would be pretty happy.
I think he probably will. I think him and I think that's what him and Tulsi are basically angling for.
Yeah. God, I'd love it if he could get Department of Health. But ideally, I'd like it if he could get Department like or FDA or like EPA or something along those lines. Um, or dude, if he could get Department of Health and just try to kind of strong arm some of these medical changes that Trump's talking about, that would be really quite nice too. Because that was the
I
one
would
thing, like
totally.
in the Trump Theo interview, he talks about he wants to like want to make his legacy, like changing American healthcare and American health and wellness.
That shit's so fun. That shit's so funny, by the way, that your boy Theo has been absolutely dominating at this
Oh,
point.
dude,
Like,
yeah,
I think that. I mean, again, this is a very relative term because it's. I mean, the ship has kind of sailed, but like, I think that Joe Rogan has just kind of been on a decline for a while now. Like,
yeah,
Rogan's just kind of boring. Whereas like Theo is like, dude, Theo is getting everybody.
yeah. Well, he's genuinely open minded. Like, Joe Rogan's like open minded, but he has like his stances. I think like he's like kind of he kind of has a certain tinge, and like he's very kind of pro modern technology and pro like transhumanist kind of stuff. He's not really like too much of an issue with it and everything. And I think that
Theo kind of just comes across as a good old boy.
yeah, he's just a dude that's got some questions and is just trying to just get a basic grasp on reality, and he doesn't
Well, and I
have
think
it. So
this is in maybe this is like this is probably this is maybe overly harsh. I don't think it's overly harsh, but it'll sound overly harsh. Um, Joe Rogan comes across. He does this thing where he just doesn't acknowledge that his podcast is as big as it is.
yeah,
Um, but kind of just like subtly and quietly, like toes like a very very firm company line.
yes,
There was a clip I saw online of like Shane Gillis on his show
mm-hmm,
being like talking about how he got fired from Saturday Night Live,
mm-hmm,
and then making some statement because he's just like keeping it real,
yeah.
right? He also comes across as just some dude, right?
He's been kind of
Um,
slowly self-censoring, it seems. Because I listened to his podcast and he's been
well,
getting
he's
like
the guy.
he's the guy now. Yeah,
He's the diplomat, right? He keeps it a little bit more real than Rogan though, because he's an actual
definitely.
fucking comedian.
Yeah,
Rogan
yeah.
doesn't even do comedy anymore, right? Point is, and I don't even necessarily really like comedy all that much, but point is there's this clip of like Gillis talking about um, like getting fired from SNL and then being like, it actually it like actually being like, oh, like it ended up being good for my career,
Yeah.
yada yada yada, and Rogan just like instantly shuts it down and like basically like won't entertain that idea, and it comes across as like super sketchy actually.
Hmm.
I don't even know like how else to like describe it, where it's just one of these things of like you're like actively suppressing this very obvious thing that is like used as a critique of your guys' whole scene, of just this idea that like you've successfully commodified the like anti-woke
Yeah.
David and Goliath thing. And so when someone points out that it was like good for their career to like have this cancellation happen, and that you guys have figured out a way to like alchemicalize whatever I want to say, uh like cancellations into like a launch pad for a career, that you just like need to shut it down, like you come across as like kind of a fucking sleazebag
Yeah.
actually, and you come across as like really untrustworthy. Whereas like Theo just kind of like literally just his whole bit is that he's like, I'm retarded,
Yeah.
which kind of rocks.
Yeah, it helps. And it's like there's no like I think Joe Rogan's kind of like he is retarded. Like Joe Rogan's not very smart as far as his educated takes on things, but he thinks that he's like got the most well. That's his whole thing, right? His whole thing is kind of being the guy that's like, well, I hear out all sides, and so obviously my take is going to be the most well-rounded, well thought out take because I'm
which
hearing
which
these disparate points of view, which is a sketchy
exactly which
position to be
obviously
in.
Exactly, which obviously, since we're not liberals, that doesn't like convince us of anything at
Right,
all, because
right.
it's a joke. It's a
Yeah,
fucking joke. Like, you don't have anyone. I remember like when he was like his whole thing. Remember like when like Kyle Kalinske was like his boy,
Dude,
you know, and
Jesus.
it was like just that whole. It's just funny, dude. It was just funny. Yeah, no, somehow Joe Rogan is still doing the the
Mm-hmm.
classical liberalism thing in like 2024,
Mm-hmm.
and
But
I don't.
I will give him the fact that like he does help platform interesting people.
He platforms
To
interesting people.
large people, to large audiences.
He platforms interesting people, and like he was a real one about COVID,
Yeah.
and that is kind of
It
like I
gets him
don't
a
really care
pass in
what.
my book.
Well, I don't really care what people say. Like that. That's like that was, and I think it probably still is, just like the most important thing.
Yeah. This is a
Um,
defining moment of this like it's so far a defining moment of like our lives as far as like this generation of people that are on the planet at this time. Maybe the past couple decades. I guess like 9/11 is like a defining moment of our century as far as like foreign policy and economics globally. But then like this as far as individual personal freedoms and like drawing a line on which side are you on, that's I think COVID was a big thing, and it's a watershed moment for restructuring global economy as well, just as much so. Um, but yeah, so I think that it's like your COVID stuff is very telling for me, which is obviously why I was supportive of JFK or not JFK, what the fuck, RFK Jr. for such up until the end, basically, even with the fucking Israel shit and all the other kind of sketchy stuff. Just standing 10 toes on COVID is just such a strong indicator of like where your actual values lie when it comes down to it,
right.
which is
Exactly.
nice. Because it's the thing that happened during our like we can sit around and talk about lofty ideals about personal freedoms and about government overreach and tyrannical this and censorship and whatever the fuck and all day long. And it's all great and wonderful when you have nothing to actually, put your toes to the fire. But when something comes up that's an actual real moment that you have to make a decision right there in that moment, and it's how are you going to act? And, I think we saw a lot of people that acted differently than you would expect or would hope for based on the things that they allegedly talk about and believe and stances they allegedly hold, whereas someone like Joe Rogan fucking stood 10 toes during COVID, and someone like RFK the same thing, and someone like fucking the Rare Candy Boys and like us, and it's and it's like the moment when it comes down to it, do you fucking stand or do you run or do you just hide? And it's like, yeah, people that
And one thing that I have very little patience for is I remember this is the person that I try and fail a few times to like not say anything bad about. So fuck it, I'll just continue this trend because I don't care if I've blocked this person. Like Amy Therese, I remember
Christ.
a while back just kind of trying to do this thing of being like, just so you know, like being anti-COVID, like it's like over now. Like that's like a lib thing. Like that's like vapid. Like no one cares about that anymore. Give it up. And it's just like, dude, like shut your fucking mouth, bitch. Like this. I am never ever going to let this go. I
It's
am
real
never ever
politics.
going to let this go. This is a real thing, right? This isn't you trying to fucking just like. I mean, we want to talk about shit that's like over and everything. Like, bitch, you're literally your entire fucking persona online is just cope about somehow
Yes.
remaining a Marxist, and so all you ever fucking post about anymore, because there's so many contradictions within your worldview, is just stupid, like random signaling to misogynists on the
Yeah.
right, because like you can't actually really talk on political economy at all
No,
anymore,
no.
because the second you bring up the fact that you're like an orthodox Marxist, everyone's just gonna fucking shit on you.
Mm-hmm.
um
Dude, and
yeah, so
this bitch,
anyways.
like, that's the whole thing too with the Orthodox Marxists. It's like, yeah, you hate realpolitik. Like, she hates realpolitik. She hates having to actually think about real occurring things in the moment. It's like I would rather just sit around armchair fucking theory bullshit and like talk. It's like the frozen sclerotic, just like not actually ever applying your frame of reference to the actual material politics on the ground. It's just all theoretical bullshit. It's like, yeah, COVID came along. That was a real thing. You could use that to highlight your beliefs. You could use your framework for understanding political economy to provide an analysis about COVID. You could do any of these things, but instead you just don't. And it's like, I don't know. And then you say, oh, that's over. And it's like, because you just don't want to fucking, you skirt away from the like actual real political tasks of the day any chance you get.
Exactly. And also you've just like, your income relies on this shit.
Yeah.
And so you've just found that there's no more meat left on that bone.
Yeah.
And so now you're just deeming it over. But like the reality of these issues don't rely on like your fucking career trajectory. That's actually like one of the most important critiques of the PMC that you're being a fucking hypocrite about. And you just disconnected. So I don't quite know what's going on there, but I'm just going to keep talking. I'm going to bring it on home here. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We love you. I'm going into a big, mysterious new chapter, and I don't know what that's going to look like, but I will keep you guys posted. And yeah, I don't know. God bless you, and thank you for listening. Take care.
These people are sick.
This is obviously a very, very sick individual. These people are the sickest of them all. These people are sick. They are sick. And you better get used to hearing it.
These people are sick.